Chapter 839. Blue veins appeared on his arms as they glowed immensely while increasing in size, sending his fist upwards the moment he arrived at the same height as the fake Felicio. An explosion blasted across the sky as they collided. At the last instant, the fake Felicio had crossed his arms to block Gustav's fist, but even with that, the explosion that went off sent a blast across the sky that sent him spiraling across the air. This attack was big enough to obliterate multiple streets full of buildings with the radius that the blast covered. Hover has been activated. Gustav paused in midair after activating this and flew towards the fake Felicio's body that was still spiraling across the air. It looked like he was affected as his body kept spinning while flying away uncontrollably. Gustav approached him, intending to send out another attack when... Fly. Chapter 840. The spectators had looks of awe as they stared at the battlefield. Some of them came to a realization, and their eyes widened as they heard his name. It's Jack Sherwin. Shock lined the faces of the audience like they had just seen a ghost as they began to realize who this was. My goodness, it's actually Jack Sherwin in the flesh. Gustav just had a battle with Jack Sherwin? He reduced his age and strength level? Why is he here? Where is the real opponent? Chapter 841. Her life signs also disappeared from the radar, proving that she was no longer on this planet. Of course, the MBO life signs tracking devices had limits, and they couldn't track someone like Miss Amy with that. However, it was possible to tell if the person was still on the planet or not using the life signs tracking devices. Miss Amy had disappeared from the Earth 4 months ago and had been unseen and unheard of since then. This still doesn't mean she's infected. There could have been a myriad of reasons why she disappeared. I'm sure she will come back soon. Gustav still didn't agree that Miss Amy could be infected. Well, you're not wrong, kid, but it remains a suspicion, Jack stated. I found out that you were her student. Haha, pretty interesting. She never struck me as the kind of person that would ever have a personal student, Jack added with a look of interest. Gustav, do you have any idea on her where she could have gone? Any clues or anything she has mentioned in the past? She needs to be found, Commander Cilia asked. It would seem that this was Jack's reason for coming here today. No, I haven't heard from her since I got back in here, Gustav answered. Chapter 842. There was also something else Gustav had decided to try in finding Miss Amy. He had never tried using it to find someone outside Earth before, so he had no idea if it would work or not. But Gustav hoped God Eyes was strong enough to achieve it. Life signs tracking has been activated. He had saved the life signs of everyone he cared about some time back, even though he believed it wouldn't be necessary to do that at the time, since Miss Amy was really powerful and wouldn't need protection. However, it did cross his mind that maybe he might have to look for Miss Amy one day or something, so he still saved hers just like the others. As his sight suddenly blurred, Miss Amy's life sign appeared in Gustav's mind. Soon Gustav felt his mind getting pulled into a different realm as his point of view completely transformed into a new one. Chapter 843. Increasing the speed and entering an engine-generated wormhole to increase flight travel, knowing what to avoid in space, and so on. Officer Mag couldn't believe her eyes when they moved across space smoothly before Gustav piloted the spacecraft back down after a few minutes. The only thought that came to her mind at this point was, he's an all-round genius at this point. She started questioning if there was anything Gustav couldn't do. Since the special training would be ending in a couple of days, the instructors had already informed Gustav that they would be holding a test for him. They didn't tell him what the test was going to be exactly, but he knew to expect it to be related to everything he had learned during the period of the special training. On this particular day, Gustav was in a secluded part of camp, right beneath a space underneath a waterfall. This space was practically inexistent before, but Gustav created it by blasting a massive hole in the rocky part behind the waterfall. He used his gravitational ability to cause the waterfall that would have been flowing into the hole to flow in reverse. Chapter 844. It's coming up in 10 months from now, and the MBO wishes for you to participate, Officer Mag stated. 10 months from now? Gustav had a contemplative expression as he voiced out. Yes, 10 months from now the ISOP will be holding in the Florentia galaxy. Planet Ozius. Instructor Cora added. What is it all about? Gustav asked. Just as the full meaning suggests, it's a tournament of power for youngsters all over the universe in alliance with each other. Besides Earth, many other alien planets will be sending their youngsters to participate in this tournament. There are different categories involved that test the skills and strength of youngsters all around the universe. Not only does winning bring glory to one's planet, but it also brings about different rewards, such as mineral resources from all over the universe being gifted to the winning planet. The winners also get rewards that not only add to their riches but also helps in improving their strength even more. The most important profit of all is that whichever planet wins gets to lead the Alliance for the next 100 years, and there are boons that come in accordance with that, Officer Mag explained. Chapter 845. I guess I'll have to tell them I can't participate, Gustav voiced out with a conclusive tone. Don't be so quick to come to a conclusion. The system suddenly chipped in. Why do you say so? Gustav asked. This is an opportunity for intergalactic travel, the system added. I know, but unless I have finished with every task I have on Earth, there's no point. It's better to put that aside until I am done, Gustav responded. Check where Florentia Galaxy is located before you make your decision, the system stated. Huh? Why? Gustav asked. Just check, the system responded. Chapter 846. To their amazement, Gustav was almost 2 times faster than before, which showed immense progress. Now for the last segment, the 5 instructors surrounded Gustav from every direction. For this part, there's a triangular token on one of us. You have to try and get it by any means possible while we try to stop you. It is unknown who holds the triangular token amongst all 5 of us, but you have to get it in no more than 10 minutes, Instructor Cora explained. Gustav practically had to battle all 5 of them, while still trying to get this so-called triangular token. It was also unknown who was holding this token. Gustav looked around. The instructors were all peak kilo ranks except for Officer Mag, a Delta rank mixed blood already. This would be tough, considering they weren't going to reduce their strength in the last segment. The only boon Gustav felt he had was his speed. The difference between a kilo ranked and an Echo ranked mixed blood was very high despite being only 1 rank apart. Gustav's strength was already more or less that of a kilo ranked already, but these were peak kilo ranked mixed bloods, while Officer Mag was just on another level entirely compared to the others. Chapter 847. Gustav looked down and could see the cracks on the grounds of the Isher Mountains. It was very hard to cause cracks since the surface was extremely sturdy. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he lifted his right foot, which was transforming into a beastly shape with dark brownish scales and looking extremely muscular. Bang! He slammed his foot on the ground in the next instant, causing the ground to cave in as debris scattered across the vicinity. Within the debris, pebble-sized black stones could be seen rising up due to Gustav's sudden stomping and simultaneous activation of reverse gravity. The instructors spotted his smirk this moment, and then, zing, the sacred jewel appeared behind Gustav, its silver light flickering within. Chapter 848. Since different mixed breeds had different abilities, some were more dangerous than others despite levels 40 to 47 having around level 8 mixed breeds. Even when the cadets went in parties, it was extremely difficult to go below level 40. Gustav had decided he would completely visit every nook and cranny of the dungeon and reach the lowest level, level 47. Looks like I will finally be able to use my Yarki at full strength, Gustav thought with an expression of interest. He had never really gotten the chance to use it at its full potential, and this might be the chance for him to do so. He had refrained from using it against the instructors because he still wanted it to remain hidden that he had such a power. He didn't know if anyone might recognize it. Although there were cams even in the dungeons, most times, there were disruptions in the feeds due to outbursts of energy both from cadets and mixed breeds, so it was hard to tell. This way, Gustav wasn't worried about being spotted, and he planned on reducing the range of his Yarki as he very well knew it could cover a much larger area now. Chapter 849. But this was the last thing it would ever see as Gustav charged forward the moment its axe arm slammed onto the ground. Suihai slashing towards the side, Gustav cleanly separated this creature's head off its body as he appeared several hundred feet away after taking a pause. Bam! The headless body fell to the ground as blood spread across the vicinity while the atomic blade disappeared from Gustav's hand. Shriewih bam! An opening appeared on the right side of this large rocky underground space. Gustav turned to the side and confidently walked towards the opening, leaving the battleground of destruction and blood behind. He had handled that relatively easily because Gustav was capable of dealing with anyone below the kilo-ranked level, regardless of how strong they were. Chapter 850. Chapter 850. The Power of Yarki. All S errors have been fixed. Sorry for the inconvenience. Floom. It lifted up into the air and began flying across the place at its fastest speed. Gustav calculated the speed of this creature and compared it to hover. Faster than hover, but slower than ultimate combination, Gustav noted. He felt this would be good for a default flight ability, considering hover had a time limit. Using transformation would only cost him energy points, so he wouldn't have to worry about reactivation or falling out of the sky, or overly depleting energy from activating ultimate combination form. Gustav commanded the creature to fly downwards, and it landed in front of him. Gustav squatted slightly and dug his fingers into the body of the creature, adding to the pain it was already feeling. No expression of empathy could be seen on his face as he activated Bloodline Acquisition. Bloodline Acquisition has been activated. Does host wish to extract Flame's Death Ace mixed breed form? Yes/no. Gustav proceeded to answer affirmatively and began the system extraction process. In a few seconds, it was done, and the creature turned into ash. Host has killed a level 82 Flame's Death Ace. +2, 500, 000 EXP. Gustav looked around and could see the other creatures still subjected to the power of his Yarki. Gustav moved towards the one on the right and poked his index finger forward. The moment it made contact with this Flame Death Ace, the creature began to disintegrate. It burned up and slowly turned into ash. Host has killed a level 80 Flame's Death Ace, 2 million EXP. The new features that come with my evolved Yarki are quite interesting, Gustav voiced out as he began walking towards another Flame's Death Ace. According to the records, there have never been a cosmic superior being with this type of Yarki, the system stated. Yeah, you did say it evolved, Gustav responded as he arrived in front of another one and poked his finger into its forehead. TSSHHHHSSHH, the creature disintegrated as well, just like the other two. Host has killed a level 80 Flame's Death Ace, 2 million EXP. This isn't normal at all. Moving to the next level of cosmic superiority would have been longer than this, the system added. Well, since I am the outworldly, I guess normal can no longer be attributed with me, Gustav voiced out as he moved towards another Flame's Death Ace. There were over 40 of them in the vicinity, and Gustav didn't spare a single one. He killed off every last Flame's Death Ace. Host has leveled up. It had been quite some time since he last saw a level up notification, so he was glad his visit to the dungeon was paying off. The opening to the next floor appeared somewhere ahead after Gustav had killed off these creatures. Partial Flame's Death Ace transformation has been activated. Large bat-like wings phased out of Gustav's back as he lifted off the ground and flew towards the opening with speed. After leaving this floor, several figures appeared on the same floor a few minutes later. What happened here? This floor has been cleared? There are ashes everywhere and the pungent smell of flesh. Looks like a powerful team already took care of this. The group of 6 that had just arrived had looks of awe as they moved about the place. There were usually different spaces on the same floors, which meant a group could be battling the same type of creatures as another group on the same floor, but they wouldn't come into contact with each other. That was exactly why the dungeon was built that way. Even if different groups advanced to the same ground level at the same time, they would be in different spaces to avoid meeting up, but it seemed this time a mistake had occurred as this group that had just cleared level 39 were sent to the same space in level 40 that Gustav had just cleared. Fortunately for them, they were able to move on to level 41 without having to fight any battle, but the opening ahead led to the same space Gustav had just headed in, which meant that when they moved further, they would bump into Gustav up ahead. Let's hurry up and meet up with the group so we can work together. This might have been a mistake, but it could work in our favor, and we may be able to break the record of surpassing level 42. The person who seemed to be the group leader voiced out. The other 5, who were also final-year cadets, nodded in understanding and followed after him towards the opening that led to the nest floor. They ran down the stairway that led to level 42 as quickly as they could, arriving on the next ground. To their surprise, this place had been cleared as well. Despite being a dark area, they could still see scorch marks and ashes in some areas, which depicted a battle had gone down. The group had come out victorious once more, and the opening up ahead that led to the next level was still active. Level 42, the leader of their group voiced out with a look of excitement. The others, too, were all excited as this hadn't happened in at least 4 years since the last 2 batches. During Miss Amy's time, the dungeon wasn't in existence, so it was difficult to tell whether her batch could have cleared it or not. "Let's go," the leader voiced out. "This seems like cheating." Only one of them, who happened to be the second girl in their group, voiced out with a dissatisfied tone. They paused as they heard that. "Avery, are you saying you don't want to come along?" The group leader voiced out. "Lich, we ain't doing this with our own strength. A group is just clearing the path for us," Avery stated. "So what? The only thing that matters is we scaled the 42nd floor, or the dungeon. Our names will be passed down in the MBO camp annals of history," Lich voiced out with a passionate tone. "This feels wrong," Avery stated once more. Chapter 851. Chapter 851. Door to Death. "All right, then stay here on your own. Y'all can come with me unless you're deciding to chicken out like her," Lich voiced out before running towards the opening. Grrrhhhhh. The opening up ahead began to slowly close up. The others who were initially hesitant wasted no time in running forward as they saw the opening closed up. Whether or not the glory belonged to them, they didn't want to miss such an opportunity. Only one person stayed behind with her, while the other 3 followed after Lich. Bam! The moment the opening up ahead closed up, both of them turned around and decided to head back. But suddenly, a new opening appeared on the east side of this floor. Avery looked to the side and already knew this opening probably led to a different space on the 42nd floor. "Should we check it out, Cole?" she asked. "It's just the 2 of us. We're not powerful enough," Cole voiced out in response. "If we can't win, we'll use the emergency token and they'll get us out of here safely. It's better than taking glory that we didn't work for," Avery stated. Cole gave in and followed her towards this opening. In the next few seconds, they were headed down the stairway towards level 42. As they headed down with caution, they arrived at the 42nd floor of the dungeon. The instant both of them arrived on this floor, they noticed the scene looked similar to that of the former floor. There were ashes in different corners, and the pungent smell of roasted flesh as well. "Looks like the group that cleared the previous floor went in through here," Cole voiced out as he spotted the similarities. "Then where did Lich and the others head to?" Avery's eyes widened as she voiced out. Both of them turned to face each other with a look of realization. They quickly turned around and began to head back to the entrance that led to this floor. Meanwhile, in another space on the 42nd floor, bang, boom, boom. Sounds of intense collision and explosion rang out as massive mixed breeds, looking similar to humans with eagle-like faces and shells on their backs, surrounded a group of 4. This group of 4 yelled out as they tried fending off this group of mixed breeds with different powerful attacks. However, no matter how much they tried, they had only slain one of these creatures who had the ability to move the massive truck-sized shells on their backs to any part of their bodies and prevent attacks. Not only were they extremely sturdy, but they were also powerful and were holding onto some kind of pillars. Each pound from a pillar caused a destructive force that spread across the vicinity and sent some of the cadets flying. It looked like an impossible battle as over 16 of these creatures crept in on this group that kept sending out enough firepower to total streets if this was a battle happening in a city. "If you're out there, help us. Let's work together." Lich kept screaming out as he sent forth attacks, but there was no response. "There's nobody here. We have to use our emergency token and get out before we get killed," one of the group members voiced with an urgent expression as he also did his best to fend off the creatures. "No, we have to break the record and go beyond the 42nd floor today. They must be around somewhere. Help us." Lich seemed hellbent on not leaving, believing the group that had been clearing the previous dungeon floors were around somewhere. He has gone mad. Let's leave before he drags us down with him. The other group members voiced out as they brought out their emergency tokens and tapped on them. Zing, zing, zing. They began disappearing one after the others. Don't leave, you traitors. I'll take all the glory for myself then, he shouted out as he stomped on the ground with anger and charged forward. In a few moments, despite all his outrage and use of destructive abilities, he was surrounded and trapped in their midst. No. Help. Help me. Let's work together. A roar. He screamed out as these creatures grabbed hold of him from different parts and tore him to pieces before he could use the emergency token. What was left in this space on the 42nd floor were a puddle of blood and incomplete body parts scattered all across the vicinity. Meanwhile, Gustav had just arrived on the 46th floor, and he had no idea what had transpired behind him. It had been over 3 hours since he began scaling the floors, and now he had arrived at the second to the last floor. Gustav slowly walked down the stairway as he arrived at this massive space which had whitish-colored walls and what looked like an icy altar up ahead. A massive spike of ice that extended up to the roof could be seen. Gustav walked forward as he spotted what looked like massive chains wrapped around the spike of ice. Gustav was still thousands of feet away from this exalted white altar that covered a large space, but he could see the chains clearly wrapped around the massive spike of ice. God Eyes has been activated. His eyes zoomed in on the altar area as he followed the chains that jiggled occasionally. Why is it chained up? Gustav voiced out with a confused tone as he spotted the massive creature the chains were connected to. The creature behind the ice spike shooting to the ceiling of this space had shackles surrounding its neck, and the chains wrapped around the ice spike were connected to the shackles. Gustav looked around and could see that this was the only creature present in this space, which made him wonder, wouldn't this make it easier to pass level 46? He had no idea why this was happening, but he resumed walking forward. Outside the dungeon, a commotion was stirring. Dash, what did you say? A group cleared the 42nd floor? Chapter 852. Chapter 852. Lord Tabitha Dash, what did you say? A group cleared the 42nd floor? Dash, what? Someone was left on the 42nd floor? The place erupted with commotion as the cadets at the entry points voiced out. The group that was initially down there with Lich was filling the MBO officers guarding the entrance on what had happened. Inform the instructors they'll go down there with Igor. We might still be able to save him, one of the guards said to his colleague before moving into the dungeon. At the same moment, Avery and Cole arrived on the scene. They also gave the guard their own narration mentioning what had happened and adding that a group had already cleared the 42nd floor and may have cleared the one after already as well. Did you say this group already went past level 42? One of the guards asked with a look of astonishment. Initially, it was confirmed the group got to this level, but it was unknown whether or not they had scaled the level. However, from Avery and Cole's narrations, it was certain that this group had broken the record. We have to inform Commander Cilia urgently, another guard voiced out. They wouldn't get to that level, right? Another stated with a troubled look. That's why we have to inform her before they get there. The other guard responded as they began to split into groups. Some headed into the dungeon to check on Lich, who didn't return with the others. Some headed in to go after the group that was said to have scaled the 42nd level, and the others headed towards the main hall to find Commander Cilia. We should still have time. We should be able to inform Commander Cilia before they get to that level. These were the thoughts of some of the guards headed toward Commander Cilia's office. Little did they know that not only were these floors being scaled by a lone individual, but the floors had almost been scaled completely, with this person arriving at the second to the last one. While all the commotion was ongoing at the surface, Gustav had arrived before the exalted altar. The temperature in this region had dropped drastically, but he wasn't bothered in the slightest. The ice spike was so long that he was like an ant standing before it. The massive chains were each the size of a human, and it was so long they extended high up. The shackles wrapped around the neck of the creature were also massive, yet they looked a bit small for the creature. Looking closer at the creature in captivity, it had a massive horn in the middle of its forehead that was at least thrice the length of an adult. It had a serpent-like body with crocodile-like limbs and greenish scales. Its horn was glowing brightly like with fluorescent-colored light, and it could be seen that a weird snowy-colored haze was spiraling above the massive horn. Its eyes were closed, but its body occasionally bloated and decreased due to its breathing pattern. This creature was the size of a skyscraper, and Gustav was like an ant before it. Gustav scanned the features of this creature and determined it was definitely not a level 80 to 89 mixed breeds like the rest. It was definitely more powerful than the other mixed breeds he had been coming into contact with since he got to the 40th floor. Gustav scrutinized this creature and could tell it was immensely powerful, and it was sealed internally while also chained up. He felt such a creature shouldn't be here at all in the first place, but then he looked around and couldn't see any opening to the next floor or anything of the sort. What am I supposed to do? Gustav wondered as he took slow steps forward. Surely he wasn't supposed to kill this creature because he felt this would be too powerful to handle for even full-fledged MBO officers. This was still a cadet training ground, so obviously no group would be able to kill this creature. It wasn't as large as the rocky-like creature he came into contact with within the Shardishi planet, but it wasn't too far off in size. Shwaya, while taking steps forward, the tail of the creature suddenly moved. It coiled and swerved about the place softly. In the next moment, flicker, flicker, the two gigantic eyeballs of the creature opened up, and it stared down at Gustav. VHHMMMM, a massive pressure suddenly descended upon the place as the creature slowly positioned itself to stand on all fours. Gustav paused his movement at this point and stared up at the creature. For some reason, he was unfazed by this pressure and didn't try to keep his distance from the creature or anything despite the fact that it was close enough for it to trample upon Gustav without the shackles interfering. What do we have here? A mixed blood after so many years. The voice, surprised by the creature, boomed across the place. It speaks? Gustav voiced out with a surprised tone. What do you mean by it? Have some respect, kid. I'm a he. Call me Lord Tabitha. The creature voiced out with a tone of disdain in response to Gustav's remark. Lord what now? Gustav voiced out while raising one eyebrow. Tabitha, the creature stated. Okay, Tabitha, Gustav responded. You forgot to add the Lord in front, the creature said with a solemn tone. Oh my bad. Tabitha, Gustav said once more. Lord Tabitha, Lord, don't forget that. The creature yelled out once more. Sure Tabitha, Gustav nodded slightly while still looking upwards. You. The creature had fumes blowing out of his ears at this point. Seeing this puny-looking mixed blood in front of him remain unwilling to obey. What exactly are you, and why are you chained here? Gustav asked. How did you even manage to get here, mixed blood? And no one was supposed to ever reach this level, Tabitha voiced out while scrutinizing Gustav. Interesting. So no one was supposed to get here. Now that someone did manage to get here, what is supposed to happen next? What is your purpose of being placed here? Gustav asked while squinting his eyes in suspicion. Chapter 853. Chapter 853. Who said I was gonna leave? What is your purpose of being placed here? Gustav asked while squinting his eyes in suspicion. Death, Tabitha stated. Death? Gustav stated with a confused tone. You heard me the first time, kid. Death. Now that you have arrived here, I can't let you leave this place alive. Tabitha stated as he breathed out, causing the wind to blast out of his nostrils intensely, which caused Gustav's hair to blow backward. To his surprise, Gustav still stood there with his expression unchanging as he kept staring at Tabitha. Are you not scared? I said you will die here. Why do you show no fear? Tabitha voiced out with a tone of disbelief. Stop messing around. You can't harm me. Why are you here? What am I supposed to do to get to the last floor? Gustav voiced out with a calm look. Although I cannot harm you just as you have said, and no one was truly supposed to reach this level, Tabitha revealed once more. I was placed here as a sentence for a crime I committed long ago. I may be a mixed breed, but I am no unintelligible one like the others you have come into contact with in the past. That is why instead of killing me, Jack placed me here for one purpose, Tabitha added. Jack placed him here? Gustav thought internally with a look of suspicion. He wondered what the backstory behind all this was. Not only am I imprisoned here, but I am also the guardian of this floor, and the one who controls the space changes in the dungeon. You cannot move on to the next floor without my input. Although no one was ever meant to get to this floor, or the last protocols were already put in place to handle situations such as this. With that being said, you can only move to the next floor by passing my test, Tabitha stated. What test? Gustav asked. You have to answer 3 questions correctly to move to the next floor, Tabitha answered. That's it? Just 3 questions? Gustav sounded a bit surprised, considering he expected a more complex task. Yes, just 3 questions, but you would be foolish to underestimate the difficulty because my knowledge is vast, Tabitha voiced out with a slightly scornful look upon seeing Gustav's expression. Sure. Let's get this over with, Gustav said with an unbothered expression. First question, Tabitha said while breathing out a gust of wind from his nostrils. How was the first mixed breed to ever exist formed? Tabitha asked with a slight grin. This was a tricky question, considering the mixed breeds had existed for thousands of years, and there had been speculations on whether Slarkovs mated with earth animals to form the first mixed breed, or the energy pollution from the meteors that fell down to Earth caused the mutation. There were also speculations that both these theories were true, but it was unknown which one actually caused the first mixed breed to walk the Earth. The knowledge had been lost to time, and now only speculations existed. It would be difficult to give the right answer since one could only make guesses based on these speculations. Gustav could guess Tabitha knew the right answer because he had been around for a long time. Probably only those who had been around for long knew the right answer. Well, mixed bloods existed before mixed breeds did so. The first mixed breed to ever exist was a mixed blood whose bloodline energy spiraled out of control, turning them into a beast, Gustav voiced out. Tabitha's eyes widened slightly as he heard that answer. How did you? Judging by his reaction, Gustav could guess that he answered correctly. I thought you said this was going to be very difficult, Gustav voiced out with a smug look. I am sure you must have guessed this one correctly. The next question won't be so easy, Tabitha stated with a tone of certainty. Sure. Let's hear it, Gustav responded. Next question. How many other intelligent mixed breeds exist besides me? Tabitha asked with a slight grin. By intelligent do you mean others that can speak and mimic human behavioral patterns, or just having higher intelligence than that of normal mixed breeds? Gustav asked with a serious look. If it was the latter, Gustav was sure of being able to answer, considering there were not a lot of mixed breeds who had better intelligence than the average mixed breeds. The former, Tabitha answered. Well, shit. Gustav cussed internally. He had never met another mixed breed that could speak. Neither had he heard before that there were mixed breeds capable of speaking. He knew there were a few mixed breeds who had high intelligence opposite to that of normal beasts, but they did not speak. They would be able to understand human gestures and words, but speaking it was a different thing entirely. This question was truly a difficult one as Gustav didn't know whether Tabitha was the only mixed breed who was capable of this or not. This made him wonder why such information would be kept hidden from the world, since there was no research he hadn't already done on mixed breeds already. It was obvious that such a thing was kept under the wraps. Well, there's no rule that states I can seek for answers from another source, Gustav suddenly voiced out. Indeed, there is no rule like that, but you can't seek for answers because the moment you leave this place you will never be allowed on this floor again. So you can't leave, Tabitha stated with a light gruff. Who said I was going to leave? A smirk appeared on Gustav's face as he voiced out. A suspicious feeling arose from within Tabitha as he heard Gustav say this. He wondered what Gustav meant, but after saying that, Gustav didn't speak for some time. Instead, he closed his eyes. What is he up to? Tabitha wondered. Within a well-structured office, a group of guards stood in front of a lady clad in high-standard MBO uniform. Did you say a group already scaled the 42nd floor? She asked with a look of astonishment. Chapter 854. Chapter 854. Economy? Yes, Commander Cilia. It was reported by a group who is currently missing a member. They never met the group responsible, but they spotted the floor cleared. One of the guards voiced out. We have to get down there now. Commander Cilia voiced out with a tone of urgency. Understood. The guards voiced out as they stormed out of the office with Commander Cilia. Let's hope they haven't met Tabitha yet, or drastic measures will have to be taken, Commander Cilia said internally. Although she was worried, she wasn't too bothered because the floors got way more difficult the lower one went. Just because the so-called group managed to scale the 42nd floor, it doesn't mean they would be able to scale the 43rd and 44th floor. Even if they could, Commander Cilia and the guards felt it would take a lot of time, and less than 30 minutes had gone by since they received the information. Do we have any information on the cadets in this group, or any speculations on who they could be? Commander Cilia asked as they made their way to the dungeon. The guards responded with a no and mentioned once again that there had been no sightings whatsoever, and even the scene left no clues as to what other abilities were used beside flames. This made Commander Cilia to think deeply as she recalled the strongest flame user among the final years. Unfortunately, this person was below the top 50s on the final year's ranking, so she didn't believe he was capable of accomplishing such. There was no claim of any other clues besides ashes, so everyone believed it had to be flames, but then things didn't add up the more Commander Cilia thought of it. They had no idea Gustav was responsible for all that by himself. The power of Yarki gave him the ability to disintegrate anyone within the range that had already fallen under the domination of its power. With the experiment of how power it was that Gustav had carried out, he now knew kilo-ranked mixed bloods could fall under the effect of his Yarki. This gave him a sense of invisibility, but he knew not to use Yarki casually. Only when he found himself in a precarious situation would he activate it. Gustav was still interested in testing out Yarki to find out its current limit of dominance, but there was no way for him to do that due to the fact that the strength of the mixed breeds in the dungeon was not beyond the kilo rank. He wasn't even sure if at peak kilo ranks could be affected, but if he wanted to confirm whether or not they'd be, he would have to try it on one of the instructors. Gustav wasn't interested in revealing that he had such ability, so he had discarded such thoughts from his mind. Using it against Tabitha too was out of the question because not only was Tabitha immensely more powerful than even the Delta rank, he was not meant to battle him to get to the next floor. In a few more minutes, Commander Cilia and the guards had arrived at the dungeon and were headed towards the bottommost part of it with speed. How did you get the answer? Tabitha voiced out with a surprised tone. I told you I was going to employ the help of another source. Gustav responded with a light snicker. Tabitha had a look of astonishment, wondering how Gustav could employ the help of another source while still in here. Even if he had the ability to communicate with people outside the dungeon or had a communication tool, such devices or abilities would not work here. What Tabitha didn't know was, the other source Gustav had contacted lived within him. The system had made inquiry on this, once more hacking into the database of the MBO to find the answer to this specific question. The system was not aware of every secret in the universe and on Earth. Unless it decided to research on a particular subject, it would also remain clueless to some things, which was why it was unaware of the existence of intelligent mixed breeds on this level. There happened to be 3 more mixed breeds like Tabitha currently in existence, but they were scattered across the world in remote and hidden locations. Tabitha stared at Gustav, once more scrutinizing him. He could sense that this kid was special in some kind of way which had him in deep thought. He will die if he gets to the next level, and he's not the one. But this kid is special. I should try my best to make sure he fails here so he can head back to the surface. It would be a huge loss on the MBO's part if they lost someone like this, Tabitha thought with look of generosity. Last question? Gustav voiced out after noticing Tabitha had been quiet for some time. Last question. If you lose this one, you shall be casted out and never have access to this level again, Tabitha stated with a strong tone. Yeah, wouldn't you like that? Gustav said with his eyes dropped. Oomph. I am sure you're unaware of this one. Here goes. Who created the Tsukanami? Tabitha asked with a smug look. Tsukanami? What's that? Gustav voiced out with a look of confusion. Oh, I don't know. The question is for you, not me, Tabitha said with a light chuckle. Minutes went by and Gustav still hadn't responded. Tabitha had a relieved look as felt Gustav would finally lose a question and get sent out. Yeah, so it's precisely where we are right now, but that's what it's really called. He's trying to confuse you because the name is not known. the system voiced in Gustav's head. Oh, I see. Gustav responded internally. He seemed to have been chatting with this system all this time. The Tsukanami was created by Mac. Gustav suddenly voiced out. Are you sure about this answer? Tabitha asked with an inexplicable look. Chapter 855. Chapter 855. The last floor. That tone won't fool me, Tabitha. I know that Tsukanami is also the dungeon. Jack and Mac created this whole camp with their abilities, and Mac's ability is what could have created this whole dungeon, Gustav explained. Tabitha had a look of shock on his face again as Gustav explained everything. Calling it the original name, Tsukanami was how he intended to confuse Gustav, but he didn't expect that not only would Gustav figure it out, but he would also know the exact person among the duo who created this particular space within the camp. Correct, Tabitha voiced out with a tone of defeat. A smirk appeared on Gustav's face after hearing that. You have answered all 3 questions completely, so I have no choice but to give you access to the next floor. Tabitha voiced out and paused briefly. Thighs, a bright door-sized opening suddenly appeared by the side. It glazing with light, which made it obvious that it was a spatial gateway that would lead to different place. But kid, I advise you not to go into that last floor because what is down there will end you, Tabitha said with a strong tone of warning. What is down there? Gustav asked. I am not allowed to say, but only the right one can go in and survive. Any other person will die. You're a talented kid. Don't waste your life like this, Tabitha advised once more. Interesting. Thank you, but I'll have to see for myself, Gustav voiced out as he slowly walked towards the spatial door while he squinted his eyes with a serious look. Tabitha sighed as he watched Gustav walk towards the opening. He already knew Gustav was a hard-headed kid since they began speaking, so he kind of expected this. He could only hope Gustav would be okay. As Gustav arrived at the opening, another opening appeared far behind this large space. Commander Cilia and the guards were arriving at the same time and spotted Gustav walking into the opening from thousands of feet away. Stop him. Tabitha, stop him. She yelled out as she sped forward as quickly as she could. Tabitha spotted them also at this time, but it was all too late. In the next instant, Gustav walked into the opening and it disappeared before Commander Cilia could arrive at the altar area. Bam! She landed in front of Tabitha and looked up at him. Why did you let him go in? She voiced out with an immense look of worry. He answered the 3 questions correctly. Tabitha answered truthfully. What? Show me footages of the last 30 minutes. Commander Cilia commanded with a look of disbelief. As you wish. Tabitha sounded disgruntled as he responded. A small square-shaped cloudy screen appeared in front of her which displayed the footage of Gustav's arrival on this floor all by himself. Commander Cilia's eyes widened as she finally saw his facial and body features properly. Gustav? He cleared all those floors by himself? She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Due to this footage, it was obvious that Gustav had been the one clearing the floors, not the so-called unidentified group they initially thought it was. Commander Cilia was astonished, but at the same time even more worried than before after figuring out it was Gustav. That is the most talented cadet in the entire camp, and you just sent him off to die, Commander Cilia said with a look of disappointment. That kid? I knew he was special, Tabitha voiced out with a slightly regretful tone. I had no choice. He answered all 3 questions correctly. How was I supposed to expect that the best youngster under your tutelage would suddenly appear here and render my hundreds of years of knowledge acquired useless? I tried, but I wasn't able to prevent him from heading to the next level, Tabitha added. Open the gateway to the last level. I'm going in to save him, Commander Cilia commanded. I cannot do that. You very well know the rules, Tabitha replied while shaking his head. Try. We can't lose such an important asset to the future of the MBO. Commander Cilia had never looked so frustrated as she voiced out. It is impossible unless he walks out himself, Tabitha voiced out once more. This was something Commander Cilia already knew, but the situation was dire. How was she going to explain what happened to the higher-ups when Gustav was well known not just to them, but to the whole world as well? You mentioned he is the most talented. Who knows? The kid might surprise us. We have no choice but to be hopeful, Tabitha stated. Meanwhile, it was already circulating around camp that a group had managed to break the record and pass the 42nd floor, so cadets were gathering at the dungeon from all across camp. No one wanted to miss out on the revelation of this group. Gustav found himself underneath a clear-looking sky after passing through the gateway. He looked back at the disappearing passageway with a slightly bothered expression. Who was that? He voiced out after the passageway disappeared. He had felt a presence appear, and he also faintly heard a voice while he was walking through the spatial passageway. Gustav decided not to think much of it and looked forward at this space he had appeared in. Looks like I'm no longer underground. The last floor exists in a separate dimension? Gustav was a bit surprised seeing this. No rocky underground walls or weird structural setting which suited whatever creature he would have to battle. Instead, what he could see here was a large and finite space underneath a bright sky. The first thing that would draw anyone's attention upon getting here was the glowing, multicolored, slanted square-shaped figure in the distance. It looked like a glowing slanted square with two more smaller slanted squares of different size within, vermilion, lilac, and the smallest slanted circle within, amaranth. This made it look like one was staring at glowing steps that led deeper into an unknown circle. What is that thing? Gustav thought as he slowly walked forward. Gustav disobeyed and sent his senses peering into the white light. The memories of this unknown being began playing in his mind like a series. Oh, you're an artificial life form, I see. You. Stay away from my memories. Looks like you've gone through a lot. Or rather, a lot has gone through you. How are you doing this? You're just a mere earth weakling. Stay away. I see, so this is your purpose, but you wreaked havoc on Earth in the past? You. Stay away. I will devour your existence even faster. A dialogue went on between Gustav and this unknown being in their subconscious as this being continued to devour Gustav's existence. It seemed to have emotions as it got even angrier the more Gustav spoke and devoured Gustav's existence even faster. Gustav was mostly phasing through the subconscious of this being, not only looking through its memories, but also looking for a way to retract everything that had been pulled out from him. After some time, he finally found an interesting memory. The part where the being was attacking Earth and how Jack overcame it. Using this new piece of information, Gustav managed to pause the devouring process. Do you really think you're powerful enough to stop me from devouring your existence? The being yelled in Gustav's mind as it increased the power of its pull on Gustav's existence and resumed the devouring process once more. Gustav internally used every bit of strength he could, and a tug of war began between them. This being was repeatedly put in a pause and resume situation as Gustav interfered with the process as much as he could. Neither side was willing to give up the pull, but even with this, Gustav knew he was still losing the fight. The mental and spiritual toll this internal battle was taking on him was not in any way little. If it had been any other person, they would have been long devoured, which astonished this being a lot. It had even managed to put Jack in a tough spot for a brief moment, which proved just how almost irresistible its strange power was. Jack being Jack, it was expected he would overcome, but the same couldn't be said for Gustav, who was way weaker in comparison. Chapter 857. Chapter 857. What are you? As Gustav could feel himself slowly succumbing and losing against this being as his figure turned more transparent with time. In the end, everything shall be futile. I will devour you. The being voiced in his mind as the pull it exuded turned stronger and the weird energy, phasing from the slanted multicolored squares, increased in intensity. At this point, Gustav was at a loss on what to do and tried reaching out to the system, but there was still no response. He guessed that since his existence was being devoured, the system might also be getting devoured as well. Just how powerful was this being that he was able to render even the system powerless? Yarki. Gustav sent his senses to the deepest parts of himself, trying to trigger Yarki as a last resort, but it was currently unresponsive. What is this that I see within you? You have achieved cosmic superiority? The being sounded extremely astonished as it voiced in Gustav's mind. It had followed Gustav's senses and felt the Yarki as well as the cosmic superior energy hiding within. Ha 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 ha, I will devour the existence of a cosmic superior being. Truly interesting. This is very good. This is very good. The being sounded excited as it exerted more strength in devouring Gustav. All of a sudden, the streams of white gushing out of Gustav's figure turned bright yellow with a mix of red. Huh. The unknown being voiced out its confusion as it began to feel heated from consuming Gustav. The stream gushing out of Gustav that had turned bright yellow with a mix of red was now starting to look like the sun. Fuhum Gustav's entire being turned into the same color, making it look like he was covered by the aura of the sun as a strange and unknown energy phased out of him. What is this? The voice of the unknown being boomed across the space as it felt its energy cowering in fear to this unknown energy phasing out of Gustav's being. The being felt itself been burnt from the inside out the more it devoured Gustav. Now it felt like it was being devoured instead of Gustav. What are you? Erf? What are you? The being yelled out repeatedly as it felt indescribable heat tearing its energy apart as Gustav's sun-like aura spread across the space and pushed its own back completely. This strange energy phasing out of Gustav had completely taken dominance of this entire space, and the stream initially gushing out of Gustav was now being pulled back. I feel strange. What is going on? Gustav wondered subconsciously. With the being almost devouring him completely earlier, he had gotten to a state where he was no longer conscious, but now he was starting to feel like he was recovering. Not just recovering, but something was awakened inside of him. As the stream was being retracted back into Gustav, the slanted multicolored glowing squares up ahead were beginning to shrink. Gustav was devouring this being subconsciously. Stop. Erf. It kept yelling out, but to no avail. The squares continued to shrink till even the colors they exuded began to fade. It's you. You're the one, aren't you? The being seemed to have figured out something as its existence was on the brink of getting snuffed out. The outworldly. It's you. Its voice began fading as it came to this realization. It stopped struggling in any way at this point and let Gustav freely devour it. As the last vestiges of its existence was devoured, it uttered one last word. Master. The squares disappeared completely after that, and the entire space began to fall apart. Cracks appeared in mid-air, and the grounds began to split. The dimensional was ripping itself apart after the power that held it together was gone. At this point, Gustav opened his eyes that were radiating with the glow of the sun. The destruction of the space instantly came to a stop as the sun-like aura oozing from his being spread across the place. What is this power? I feel like I could destroy a city with a casual flick of my wrist, Gustav muttered softly as he raised his hand and stared at it. His entire body was still glowing with the sun-colored energy, his hand included. A portal opened up in front of him, which led to the previous floor. He slowly walked forward and went through it. It had been hours since Commander Cilia and the guards arrived at the level 46. They had been waiting all this time with Tabitha, while thinking of different ways to get to the last level. He would be dead by now. And no need to bother trying to seek for a way to infiltrate the last floor, Tabitha voiced out. It's Gustav. He might have managed to find a way to stay alive. Commander Cilia didn't want to lose hope of Gustav still being alive. I know that kid is special, but don't fool yourself. You know no one else is capable of surviving unless they are as strong as Jack and the others, or they have the token you possess, Tabitha stated, hitting Commander Cilia with a dose of reality as she recalled just how terrifying the presence within the last floor was. Commander Cilia looked down with a devastated expression. This is all your fault, Tabitha, you should. Just as she was speaking, a portal suddenly appeared in front of the altar. Commander Cilia, Tabitha, and the guards all stared in the direction of the portal as they felt an immensely powerful and domineering energy coming from it. Step, step, step. Gustav casually stepped out of the portal, arriving with a sun-like glowing figure. Vroom, the domineering energy spread across the place, causing every single one of them to feel their knees weaken. Even Tabitha felt pressure from this energy oozing forth from Gustav. Gustav? Kid? Commander Celia and Tabitha voiced out at the same time with surprised expressions. The instant Gustav walked a few steps forward, his body began to dim. The glow receded along with the domineering energy and Gustav returned to his normal look. Huh, it's gone, he said internally as he could no longer sense the power from a moment ago. Chapter 858. Chapter 858, Kohilia's motives, huh? It's gone, he said internally as he could no longer sense the power from a moment ago. The vicinity also returned to tranquility. Now not only was Gustav left wondering where the power from a while ago came from, but he was also wondering where it disappeared to as well as the being he devoured in the last floor. Commander Celia, what are you doing here? Gustav voiced out with a suspicious tone as he looked around. He could also see several guards scattered around the place. They all stared at Gustav with looks of shock and astonishment like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. What was that power he exuded a while ago? Thoughts similar to this ran through everyone's mind. Are you okay? Commander Celia blurted out as she moved closer to Gustav. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? Gustav responded while squinting his eyes. How did you survive, kid? Tabitha asked with a tone of disbelief. Didn't I tell you I would? Gustav said while walking towards the altar area. He sat at the edge as his mind reeled a bit. He could feel a weird sense of fatigue washing over him. I wonder why the MBO would place such a dangerous being on one of the floors, though? Are you guys really trying to end the existence of the cadets? Gustav asked with a light chuckle. Commander Celia's face lightly paled as she heard that. She arrived in front of Gustav with a worried look. What happened in the last floor? Well, I'm here, so what do you think happened? Gustav answered with a question of his own. You survived, so does that mean it let you go? Commander Celia asked because she was still having a hard time constructing what could have happened internally. Even someone as powerful as she was needed to go in there with a token to prevent the being from devouring her existence, so she could not understand how Gustav managed to pull it off except it let him go. Let me go? Gustav laughed lightly after hearing that. Do you think such a being would be willing to just let me go? Gustav asked. Knowing the personality of this being, Commander Celia herself knew well that such a thing happening was practically impossible, but what other explanation would there be for this? Kid, you devoured it, didn't you? Tabitha seemed to know what had happened already as he stared at Gustav from up above. Devoured it? Impossible. Commander Celia stated with a look of disbelief. Its name was Kohilia. I have seen its memories. Jack imprisoned it here when it came down to Earth, causing havoc in a bid to find someone, Gustav narrated. Me, he said internally. Commander Celia couldn't believe her ears as Gustav narrated what Kohilia was and its various experiences with other planets it had visited. According to records that had been hidden to the world, Kohilia had devoured the existences of alien creatures on different planets. It would devour planets and solar systems when it didn't get what it wanted. This was information that only a few knew in the MBO. It had been hidden to everyone else. When it came to Earth to do the same, it encountered Jack and wasn't powerful enough to end Jack. Jack ended up defeating it and sealing it here instead. Why did Jack seal it here? Gustav asked. No one was ever meant to reach this part of the dungeon. Sir Jack constructed this whole dungeon using his space construct and sealed it in the last floor. At the time, it seemed like the best thing to do considering no cadet would ever be powerful enough to surpass the 42nd floor, except they were not cadets but full-fledged officers, Commander Celia stated. No, you're wrong. Tabitha suddenly cut her off. Huh. Commander Celia had a slightly confused expression as she looked up at him. No one was expected to ever reach this stage, except it was the person who Kohilia came looking for in the first place. When Jack stopped Kohilia in the past, he found out its motive due to reading its memories. He placed Kohilia here not only to imprison it, but also for the person who Kohilia came in search of to be revealed one day, and now we finally know who that person is, Tabitha said while squatting, bringing his face level close to Gustav's. Commander Celia's eyes widened slightly as she heard this. Gustav's entire body was like an ant before Tabitha's gigantic head as both of them locked eyes. Who are you, kid? Tabitha asked with a strong but wary tone. What does it matter? Gustav responded with an unfazed tone. I need to know whether or not you are a threat to the existence of Earth, Tabitha stated. Well, it's kind of the opposite, and I almost got erased on the other floor, so I really don't know what you're talking about when you say I'm the one it's been looking for, Gustav voiced out. So what happened to it? Did you or did you not devour Cohelia? Tabitha asked. I don't know what happened, but I won the battle. Gustav shrugged his shoulders while responding. Gustav didn't want to admit to anyone that the Cohelia was here to find him because he didn't know what actions the MBO might take. It was already obvious that he won whatever battle that happened on the last floor, so he couldn't lie about that, but he had decided he would deny till the very end that Cohelia was here to find him. You should inform Jack so he can come inspect this kid himself. I don't trust him, Tabitha said to Commander Cilia. Enough of this. I have cleared all the floors and I am now heading back to my room to rest. I am tired, Gustav said while standing to his feet. He truly was feeling fatigued, but it was mostly mentally. It had been no less than 12 hours since he embarked on the journey to clear all the floors. He was able to accomplish that, but now he needed good rest as well as time to digest everything that had happened. Fwyu Tabitha blew an icy breeze that left Gustav frozen in the next instant when he was about to take another step forward. You should isolate him till Jack finishes inspecting him, Tabitha said after freezing Gustav. Unfreeze him, Commander Cilia commanded. What? I did that to help you guys. Don't tell me you want to let him go? Tabitha voiced out with a tone of annoyance. Do you even know who he is? Commander Cilia asked. This kid is the valued student of young Miss Amy. Unless you want her to come down here and blast you to pieces, I suggest you unfreeze him now, Commander Cilia stated. The young mixed blood who can contend against Jack? Tabitha asked. Yes, this is her student, which is one of the reasons he is so skilled. The MBO doesn't mess with him because we believe if anything goes wrong with him, she will be able to stop him herself. I suggest you refrain from doing anything stupid that would incur her wrath, Commander Cilia explained. Geez, that young blood is scary. All right, but make sure you tell Jack to inspect him for abnormalities. Who knows if we have a ticking time bomb on our hands, Tabitha said before blowing out breeze from his mouth again. Gustav got freed in the next instant and turned to look at Tabitha with an irritated look. He doesn't need to be in isolation for that, Commander Cilia said before turning around to leave with Gustav. Gustav, you have to keep everything that has happened here a secret. Please do not inform anyone about the things you have witnessed in this floor as well as the last, Commander Cilia said as they walked away. Sure. You'll just make sure you have a good compensation for me to keep my mouth shut. This shouldn't be in a cadet's dungeon in the first place, Gustav responded without any sign of being intimidated by all that had happened. Commander Cilia had a wry look on her face as she responded to Gustav. Minutes later, they arrived at the entrance of the dungeon, which was crowded with lots of cadets. Barely any cadet was moving in. Most of them just stood by the entrance like they were waiting for something. The moment Commander Cilia arrived with Gustav, their eyes locked onto them. Dash, isn't that Gustav? Dash, is he part of the group that cleared the 42nd floor? Dash, where are the rest of them? They instantly recognized Gustav, and a lot of them were astonished but felt it also made sense since it was Gustav. They wondered where the rest of the group was as they watched Gustav walk out alone with just Commander Cilia and the guards who initially followed herein. Hey Gus, Gustav heard a familiar voice call out to him from the side. Chapter 859. Chapter 859. Confusing Thoughts. Error has been fixed. Gustav paused his movement as he spotted within the crowd gathered at the front. You were in there this whole time? Voiced out as he pushed himself out of the crowd. It turned out he wasn't alone. Ildris, Falco, and Timmy were with him as well. You guys. You're here too, Gustav said as he spotted the rest of them. Yeah, we came here to team up and scale the floors. You weren't in your room when we knocked earlier, so we had to come here by ourselves, Ildris explained. Oh, I was just leaving. I've been here for over half a day, Gustav responded with as he yawned lightly. Oh yeah, these guys are saying your group cleared the 42nd floor. Tell us, man, how far did your group go? Falco voiced out with an excited expression. Group? Nah, I went in by myself, Gustav stated. By yourself? Teamy eyes widened as he voiced out lightly. His voice wasn't low, so the cadets in the vicinity heard this. Their faces were filled with astonishment and disbelief as they began chattering. Dash, he scaled the 42nd floor all by himself? Dash, impossible. He must be lying. Dash, Commander Cilia went in to get him, and he's here all by himself, so he must have gone in by himself. Dash, or maybe all his teammates are dead. Different opinions and thoughts were being voiced out after the revelation. Yeah, I was alone all through. I don't understand why Commander Cilia came to find me, Gustav said while shrugging his shoulders. They said you went beyond the 42nd floor. How far did you go? He asked with a look of excitement. The 46th floor and then the 47th floor. But both are one-time entry floors. No one will be able to get beyond the 45th floor anymore, Gustav stated. You scaled all the floors? Ildris asked with a surprised tone. Yeah. Want to go back to rest now? I'm exhausted, Gustav responded while turning around to leave. You gotta tell us all about it later, man. He voiced out, and Gustav proceeded to raise a thumb up as he walked away. At this point, the cadets in the vicinity were all astonished. It turned out that not only were there no groups, but Gustav had managed to scale all the floors. Gustav left the dungeon with Commander Cilia, who said Jack might be coming over to camp again later to inspect Gustav. Gustav just shrugged and said he didn't mind so long as they didn't try to do anything stupid like isolate him. Hours later, Gustav was sitting on his bed with his right hand held out. He had reminisced about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours, and it still left him astonished. His senses peered into his hand, and he could see a transparent orb-like seal in which 3 overlapping slanted squares with different colors could be seen within. This was where Kohelia had been sealed within him after he devoured it. However, Gustav was unable to talk to Kohelia, sense its consciousness, or use its ability in any way. It was like Kohelia was sealed within him, but he had no access to it, or he just didn't know how to unseal it. Gustav had tried various ways to see if he could use Kohelia's powers, but it was all to no avail. He could only stare at it within the seal. Besides this, the power that manifested from Gustav when he was about to be devoured completely was also nowhere to be found. Gustav suspected it might be from his cosmic superiority, but at the same time he wasn't so certain. Kohelia figured out that he was the outworldly before it was devoured completely, so there was a chance that the power did not come from cosmic superiority, but rather it came from his existence as the outworldly. But at the same time, this thought confused Gustav, as Huseruus mentioned that a force had already tampered with his existence as the outworldly, so his outworldly abilities were missing. Everything just seemed kind of confusing, but Gustav was mostly disappointed, because it looked like he didn't get anything out of scaling the dungeon completely, besides the EXPs that had helped him in reaching level 73. Also, Gustav seemed to have gotten a few rewards from the system that included level increase in some skills. His silent advancement skill also evolved to stealth after it had been at the max level for some time. This made Gustav understand that system skills were capable of evolving after reaching max level. He thought of sprint and dash, wondering why they were taking so long to evolve, but he hoped they would soon. System, what really happened there? Gustav asked. I am also unaware. All I know is the moment Kohelia began using its power, everything went blank for me. I couldn't talk to you or sense the environment anymore. The system explained its experience at the last floor. Just what type of power does Kohelia use that it has an effect on even you? Gustav was amazed as he voiced out. A type of power that is unfathomable. Jack would have lost to it if he wasn't so powerful, the system responded. It called me master in its last moments, and apparently it has been looking for me. Gustav was not aware of why this was so, as he didn't browse through all of Kohelia's memories, but he was really conflicted right now since he didn't have access to Kohelia anymore. Well, I'm sure that's pretty simple, Gustav. Have you not figured out by now that there is barely any type of power that is capable of having effect on me? The system voiced out like it was hinting at something. Yeah? I don't remember you mentioning you could be affected by any power, especially when you have transcended across galaxies. Gustav said with a thoughtful gaze. Exactly, but this one had big effect on me, and the only power I know capable of doing that is the power of the outworldly, the system stated. Chapter 860. Chapter 860. The power is mine? What do you mean? Gustav asked while squinting his eyes. It called you master because it was initially a part of you. Cohelia was using your power, the system added. What? It was using my power? I don't understand how that is even possible. None of all these makes any sense, Gustav said with a slightly confused expression. The items scattered across the universe that the time candidate is supposed to help you find are actually items belonging to the outworldly, a part of his power, your power. Cohelia is one of the items, and it came looking for you by itself, the system explained. I wasn't supposed to reveal this to you, but since you already acquired one of them, I guess there is no problem in telling you. Although it was unexpected that one of them was on Earth, the system added. So that means the power is mine? How is it that I can't use it then? Gustav asked. Your body took the necessary steps and sealed it away because you are currently too weak to wield such a power. The system responded. Something that could make even the most powerful mixed blood on Earth wary and render the strength of MBO officers that were stronger than Gustav useless. Of course, its power was no joke. Gustav wielding such a godlike power would make him almost invisible, but it seemed such power was too much for him as he was now. Wait, is this why one of the 5 years' quests is for me to become the most powerful mixed blood on Earth? Gustav asked. I can't tell you the answer to that, the system responded. If the other items just like this one have nearly invisible abilities that could render lots of powerful people useless, I would not be able to wield their power due to weakness, and they would end up getting sealed within me just like this one. I have to get stronger to be able to wield them in the future upon acquiring them. Gustav held his chin as he voiced out his theory. The system kept silent, not revealing to him whether he was correct or not. However, Gustav felt his theory made sense. Become the strongest to become even stronger. Whatever was coming was probably no small thing considering being the strongest on the planet, and one of the most powerful in the universe wasn't enough. When will I be able to unseal it? Gustav asked. When you're powerful enough. The system answered. How powerful? Gustav wanted a specific answer. When you're powerful enough. The system answered with the same phrase once more. Gustav. TCH. Gustav decided to stop asking and started thinking of how he would exploit the MBO to get anything he wanted for keeping his mouth shut on the Tabitha and Cohelia matter. He already knew that even if Jack inspected him, he wouldn't find the presence of Cohelia within him since it was sealed. Of course, the MBO would still be suspicious of him even after finding out he scaled all these floors all by himself. But there was nothing they could do to him unless they found out he did something wrong. Even with Miss Amy being away from Earth presently, they were still reluctant about treating Gustav anyhow they willed. In a flash, another day went by and Gustav spent the rest of his time moving around camp and spending time with EE, Angie, and the others. Except for channeling his bloodline in the middle of the night, Gustav didn't engage in any form of training. At this point, it had already circulated all across camp that Gustav completed all the levels. It was a very hot topic, and multiple cadets had approached him to ask for insights after saying they got stuck in floors above 40, even with their groups. Gustav mostly avoided all these group of people because there was no way he could tell them. He scaled through because of cosmic superiority. If Gustav had tried using just brute strength and his normal abilities, at most he knew within himself he wouldn't be able to get beyond the 43rd floor. The 43rd to 45th floor had mixed breeds that rivaled multiple peak kilo-ranked mixed bloods. Not only was Gustav all by himself, he was still far from being a kilo-ranked mixed blood, more so a peak-ranked one at that. Cosmic superiority was just too powerful at this point, but Gustav was still unaware of whether it could affect anyone beyond the kilo rank. At this point, everyone on camp was comparing Gustav to the most powerful mixed blood who was a final year cadet. This number one final year cadet had not accomplished such a feat and had only been said to visit the dungeon with groups in the past. Compared to what Gustav's recent feat, they felt he didn't hold a candle to Gustav. However, the number one who went by the name Danny had been away from camp for some time, so it was unknown whether he had improved in strength since they hadn't seen him in so long. This made it hard for a lot of final years to accept that Gustav was stronger. But thinking of it, they were unable to tell if anyone was capable of clearing the dungeon all by themselves without any group. Gustav was unbothered by all the debates occurring across camp. A lot of cadets were disappointed Danny wasn't around at this time. They were hoping they'd see a duel between him and Gustav. Such event would not take place because Gustav would be leaving the camp soon. His next mission briefing was taking place the following day. How is it that we still can't get past the 42nd floor? Gus, you gotta give your boys some tips, E voiced out as he laid on Gustav's couch with a fatigued look. Let me see, Gustav said as he held his chin like he was thinking of a good tip. E sat up and Eldris, as well as the rest in the room, stared at Gustav, attentively waiting for what he was going to say. When things get too tough, use your emergency token and escape from there, Gustav said before turning around and heading to the kitchen. Eldris, Falco, _ Chapter 861. Chapter 861. Are you ready for your mission briefing? All of them had looks of dissatisfaction on their faces after hearing what Gustav said. Thanks, bro. I'm pretty sure we were unaware of that tip before, E stated with a sarcastic tone. You're welcome, Gustav answered from within the kitchen. This MF, everyone burst into laughter in the next moment. Gustav later came out of the kitchen with food, and everyone settled down to have dinner. You'll want me to come with you to the dungeon tomorrow? Gustav asked. Of course. Definitely. Seems like cheating, but I want to see what's on the 45th floor. They all agreed to Gustav coming with them. They initially asked Gustav about the lowest floors and what to expect. Gustav did tell them everything they wanted to hear except for the 46th and 47th floors. Gustav left out a lot of details on that and just drew them a rough mental sketch with his words. They could sense that he was withholding information, but Gustav had told them if they wanted to know, they should try scaling all the floors, which was impossible considering the MBO had put a seal on the passageways that led to the 46th floor. It was now impossible to go beyond the 45th floor. Now they were trying to get to the 45th floor, but it was proving really tough for them as well. They knew everything would turn easy the moment Gustav came along with them. They had no idea that Gustav wouldn't be using Yarki, so things would still be difficult with him around, but it would be better than before. I won't help you too much, so don't expect things to still be very easy with me around, Gustav stated. He didn't want it to look weird when they saw him struggling with the creatures on the lowest floors, so he was saying this now. Using just his normal abilities would make things more difficult, and he wouldn't be able to get past the 43rd floor all by himself, but with the others around, it was possible even without Yarki. Sure. So long as you're coming with us, he who knows your presence might even scare them away, E voiced out after gobbling a spoonful of food. I doubt that would happen. Anyways, we'll head there after my mission briefing, Gustav stated. Everyone heard that and was reminded that Gustav would be having his next mission briefing the next day, which meant he would be leaving camp the day after tomorrow, and they wouldn't be seeing him for a couple of months again. Did you accept the ISOP participant invitation yet? Eldris asked after some time. Nah, I told them they'd have to wait for a few months before I make up my mind, Gustav answered. Wow, it's crazy, they agreed. Originally, they'd have picked all their candidates and sub-candidates by now to start registrations, Falco voiced out with a tone of astonishment. Well, it's either that or they can forget about me participating, Gustav said while shrugging his shoulders. It's Gustav, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't want to miss out on the opportunity of him representing Earth, E said with a tone of excitement. General World Training will probably start in 4 to 5 months, which means we might not even get the chance to embark on any missions before we get pulled into the ISOP training program, Timmy voiced out. I heard that mixed bloods from other private training institutions will get drafted as well. It won't be just cadets from the MBO, Falco said with a thoughtful gaze. This makes things very interesting. Only Gustav and Elevera have been ascertained to be main candidates. The rest of us will still have to fight for our spot on the main team, so we don't get placed in the sub-candidates group, E said with a look of interest. It turned out the MBO had already informed EE and the others about ISOP and wanted them to become participants, but unlike Gustav and Elevera, the others would still have to undergo some kind of test and pass before they could be placed on the main team. Well, Eldris also has no issues. But the rest of us should be wary since final year cadets will also be competing to be on the main team, Falco voiced out with a slightly troubled tone. They all knew Eldris was almost as strong as Elevera as of now. He had improved the most amongst all of them in these past months, followed by E, so they were sure he wouldn't have any issues competing to be on the main team, even if it was with final year cadets. Mixed blood from other private institutions as well. We don't know what to expect, so we should prepare ourselves properly, Falco added. Gustav, will you be attending the General World Training? E asked. I don't think I'll have the time, which is also one of the reasons I'm not so sure about participating in ISOP, but I guess we'll see how things go, Gustav answered while finishing up his food. He felt it would be a waste of time attending the training since he might be busy with something important at the time. He had decided that even if he did participate in ISOP and the government made it a criterion for every candidate to attend the training, he still wouldn't attend unless he wasn't busy. The night went by in a flash, and the next morning, Gustav headed towards the main hall for his mission briefing. Just like the last time, his briefing was taking place in Commander Cilia's office, and an MBO personnel would be delivering it to him. Gustav arrived there around 8 a.m. as expected, and an MBO officer was already waiting for him in the office. Welcome, Officer Gustav. Are you ready for your mission briefing? The MBO officer in orange, striped uniform voiced out with a mild smile. Officer Zanatus, it's been a while, Gustav responded with a smile, as well the moment he spotted this familiar-looking MBO officer. Chapter 862. Chapter 862. The Vertigan Family Crisis, Gradier Zanatus. It's been a while. Gustav responded with a smile, as well the moment he spotted this familiar-looking MBO officer. Just like the last time, Officer Zanatus was the same person who came to give Gustav his next mission briefing. I don't need to ask if you've been doing well. Your feats are spreading across the MBO, so I hear of your tales a lot. Gradier Zanatus smiled as he voiced out with a praiseful tone. Gustav just chuckled lightly in response. It was nice seeing Gradier Zanatus again after so long. This man had always been an ally, and Gustav was not in any way doubtful that he must have been a great help to situations regarding himself and Miss Amy. Even though the MBO had lots of corrupt leaders and officers, Gustav was sure of Gradier Zanatus' unbiased attitude to the duty that concerns mixed bloods, just as the MBO was created for. Except he had strict orders from the higher-ups. Both of them sat in Commander Cilia's office alone, as Gradier Zanatus began to break down Gustav's next mission. Truin, this is the emblem of Vertigan family. Gradier Zanatus voiced out as he gestured at the holographic picture that had just appeared in mid-air. What could be seen was a flat diamond-shaped object. It was gold and white in color with the sharp-looking edges. In the middle was the carving of a three-headed draconic-like creature. All in all, this emblem looked quite domineering as well as luxurious. It's actually a true piece of luxury in physical form, and it suddenly went missing a month back from the main household of the Vertigan family, Gradier Zanatus voiced out. Before anything, let me explain to you why this emblem is important, he added, so Gustav would not think he was embarking on some lackluster mission. The Vertigan family is a big extended family that has been existing for several centuries, and they have grown in such large numbers during a long period of time that they even own a city of their own and are a major ally to the government. Gradier Zanatus began explaining. Not only are they just a mixed-blood large family comparable to the size of a small city, but they also possess a lineage-type bloodline, which you might recall since you recently dueled with a cadet that comes from a small branch of the Vertigan family. Gradier Zanatus went on to mention Vaughn, who Gustav dueled recently. Vaughn was also able to transform into a draconic-like form and spit out lightning from his mouth. Lineage-type bloodlines were always very powerful and would be passed down from generation to generation, so everyone in such a family would have the same type of bloodline but in different variations. While Gradier Zanatus explained more about the Vertigan family, he didn't know Gustav was already aware of the information he was spewing out. Internally, Gustav was feeling excited after hearing his next mission related to this family, contrary to what Gradier Zanatus thought. Wouldn't this make it a good chance for me to do that? Gustav thought internally. So the emblem is passed to the next head of the main household, who would lead the entire family, and it possesses a special type of power that not only makes every family member unable to disobey the new head, but also adds a boon to their strength. Now that this emblem is missing, the ceremony of the next Vertigan head cannot take place. Whoever may have taken it away, if they figure out how to access the power within the emblem, it would cause a catastrophe. Gradier Zanatus' explanation to this point had brought Gustav to an understanding that the mission was not as simple as it looked. For all he knew, this could be some type of family feud. For such a big family like this, It could be that another branch of the family, or maybe some forces from the main family, were not satisfied with the new head that was about to be appointed. There could be a ton of reasons, like unknown internal strife, and it was really unwise to meddle in this type of business. However, it was now a case of crime amongst mixed bloods, which also made it dangerous for them, as well as the people living in their city. Now the MBO had to step in. It's been a month. Why haven't the MBO sent someone to look for it? Gustav asked. Well, first off, the main Vertigan family didn't inform us when it went missing. They tried to keep it under the wraps to prevent any form of panic or negative situation it could cause, and decided to look for it themselves. However, they were unable to find it even after weeks had gone by. The MBO was initially going to send you on a different mission, but we found this suiting considering you've mostly embarked on investigation missions in the past, even though some were rough and quite bloody, Gradier Xanatus explained. It turned out this mission was given to him based on his other performances and other missions. The things he discovered during his undercover missions, as well, so Gustav was deemed intelligent and powerful. This was precisely what the MBO needed for this type of mission. There was no doubt that at some point it might turn out physical. A scuffle could not be avoided, and they were sending him to an area where one of the most powerful mixed blood force on the Earth was located. Besides being intelligent, he had to be strong enough because no one knew what might happen and the opponents he might have to face. Solo? Or am I getting a team? Gustav asked. This is currently a 5-star mission, but you will be going solo, Officer Gustav. The MBO needs to keep their engagement in this issue under the wraps to prevent any leak-outs. It could harm the image of the main family, which is not in anyone's best interests. You are allowed to use lethal force when necessary, but you will be the only officer embarking on this mission, Gradier Xanatus clarified. Chapter 863. Chapter 863. Clearing the floors with the boys. Gustav had a serious look on his face as he heard this, but internally he was rejoicing. There was nothing he wanted more than to embark on this mission alone. Besides, he had dealt with 5-star missions before, so he was sure this was something he could handle on his own. Currently it's a 5-star mission, but it could increase based on any change in situation, which was why Gustav didn't want to be too complacent. However, this was perfect for him, as he felt he would be able to perform actions without worries since he was going to be all by himself. Mycenite City is place where the Vertigan family is located. Von Tridacil would have also been a perfect candidate for this mission, considering he comes from one of the branches of Vertigan City, but he seems to be currently indisposed, as you well know. Gradier Xanatus voiced out the last sentence with a hint of sarcasm as the holographic image changed to a new one. Gustav knew very well that Gradier Xanatus was referring to how he left Vaughn with an injury that he would not recover from for a couple of months. He ripped off his wings after all, and such an act dealt damage to Vaughn's lineage bloodline. It was a miracle Vaughn's bloodline rank didn't decrease. Gustav still didn't care about all these. He was glad he would finally be visiting a city that had tens of thousands of mixed bloods with the same type of bloodline he was interested in. The holographic image had changed to display a small city located in between a body of water. It turned out the city was on an island. You'll be heading here first the moment you arrive. Gradier Xanatus began to catch Gustav up on the different locations in Mycenite City. From there, he went on to brief Gustav about the suspicions of the main family and how they noticed the emblem got missing. Gustav was shown the pictures of all the people in the main family, as well as the person who was chosen to become the next head of the family. He's just a kid, Gustav voiced out as he stared at the dark-skinned young man who looked no older than 18 years of age. He had a curly-looking hair with braids at the front that reached down to his chin area. Yeah, he's quite young, but he's the next head according to the hereditary lineup, Gradier Xanatus responded. If it isn't normal for the next head to be this young before being placed at the seat of power, this may be where the internal issue lies, Gustav thought as he took notice of every main family look. Hours later, Gustav was within the dungeon scaling the floors with EE and the others. They talked about Gustav's new mission, which he only told he would be heading to Mycenite City for. They laughed at the irony, saying, Gustav just dealt with a family member of theirs, and now he had to visit their place. Hopefully Vaughn wasn't well known in the big family, or someone would definitely try to make things difficult for Gustav if they found out what he did to Vaughn. Gustav also had such thoughts, but instead of hoping for it not to happen, he wanted the opposite. It was almost like Gustav wanted violence over peace with his current mindset, and only him knew why. Bang, bang, boom. Sounds of collisions and small explosions rang out as they wreaked havoc across the floors while scaling them. In a few more hours, they had arrived at the 41st floor. This was the same floor where Flame's Death Ace mixed breeds were gathered. A similar scene to what happened when Gustav visited the 41st floor alone the last time played out again. These gigantic owl-faced creatures with bat wings and black, scaly beast-like body charged at all of them the moment they had been summoned. Their 3 serpentine-like tails slashed across the place as they flew. Some were able to shoot out flames from these serpentine-like tails, and their body temperature was also very high, so it made it even difficult to go near them. Chapter 864. Chapter 864. Summoning an armies, it flew off the blazing rock it was standing on, towards who it suspected was the leader of this mixed blood group. Let's put all-out attack power on a few and block out the rest till we've destroyed these ones first, Gustav voiced out as he darted towards the side. Boom. One of the creatures landed where he was initially standing on. Gustav turned to face it after dodging that, and ran forward before sliding across the ground. Flyei, one of the creature's tail swept above his body, sliding across the ground, and Gustav raised his hand up, which was armed with an atomic blade. Screeve, the atomic blade cut across the belly of the creature, slicing through its tough, hardened body as Gustav arrived on the other side. Just when he was about to give the finishing blow, the leader of the Flames' Death Ace came charging out of nowhere with a blazing figure and slammed head onto Gustav's back. Bang! Gustav was sent crashing forward as his body went over the edge of one of the areas that had a fire pit. He was falling into the immensely hot pit of flames due to the attack that had taken everyone by surprise. He was unable to react in time, as well as Eldris and the others. The leader instantly charged towards the others to give them a tough time, thinking it had already dealt with their leader as well. Flyei, a similar-looking figure to the leader of the Flames' Death Ace, suddenly flew over the edge that led to one of the burning pits in the area. Zraiariahai, its entire boy was burning with amaze flames, just like the leader, which made it freeze in place with shock and astonishment. Gustav, who had transformed into the Flames' Death Ace leader, which bloodline he took days before, swooped down with force and landed on the head of this leader. Boom! An outburst of flames spread across the place as the ground also caved in while the creature's head was buried a few feet into the ground with Gustav standing atop with his gigantic body. The shriek of the leader was heard as it pushed upwards with force, managing to release itself from Gustav's clutches despite receiving the heavy blow to its head. The other creatures in the vicinity had paused for a bit, not knowing who to attack between Gustav and the leader since both of them had similar leading appearances. Oh, I can also do this, Gustav thought as he stomped on the ground. Boom! A wave of flames spread across the ground in a circular format, forming a kind of runic figure on the ground as well. In the next instant, Flame's Death Ace mixed breeds began to phase out of the ground. It turned out to be more useful than being used only for flight, Gustav said internally as the creatures he had just summoned began to fight the other creatures from the leader of this floor. Ildris, Falco and the others were shocked as they witnessed these creatures fighting their battles. Things went from being difficult to pretty easy as they joined Gustav's army of beasts to push back the other Flame's Death Ace. Usually these creatures healed up after getting injured, so it was necessary to finish them up as quickly as possible to avoid getting jumped by the same creature twice, but it was initially difficult since there were so many of them. Now and the others could attack from the sides. Ran forward as he conjured up multiple vortexes, sending them out with as much speed as he could. Flyei, some of the creatures would fly through these vortexes by mistake as it appeared in front of them, and in the next moment find themselves receiving the full brunt of a mighty attack. Some of them would land on the ground and sink into it due to a vortex trap already left. In the next moment they would find themselves getting impaled by one of the pointy rocks by the side. Gustav dealt with the leader, overpowering it occasionally as both of them clashed with body of flames. Gustav's mobility was greatly reduced taking on this form, but his combat capabilities still aided him a lot despite being on the same level of strength with the leader while using this form. In a few more minutes, he ended the leader by wrapping his 3 serpentine-like tails around its neck and pulling its head off its body. Host has killed a level 80 Flames Death Ace. 2 million EXP. Host has killed a level 80 Flames Death Ace. 2 million EXP. Multiple notifications kept popping up due to his summon creatures also dealing the opponents. At this point, things were already ending with Eldris, Falco, and the others as well. Gustav's army of 42 had been reduced to 29, but still they managed to wipe out all the opposing creatures. Gustav didn't know how to unsummon them, so they had to move to the 43rd floor with the creatures. Things got tougher in the 43rd floor due to increase in strength of the creatures, but since they had help from Gustav's summoned creatures, they still managed to push through till they arrived on the 45th floor. The 45th floor, which was now labeled as the last floor, had only one creature. This creature was way more stronger than the others in the previous floors and had impenetrable skin. It looked like a 14 feet tall armadillo with violet-colored outer covering. It stood on 2 feet like a human with a muscular frame, but its look was nothing like that of a human. It was considerably smaller in size compared to the other creatures, but its power was unmatched. It was the literal definition of smaller, doesn't necessarily mean weaker. Its violet outer covering would glow immensely anytime it charged forward like it was building up power, and the moment it slashed out with its claws, it wreaked immense destruction across the place. Despite dodging a lot of times, Falco and Rhea had been blasted backwards by the residual impact. Chapter 865. Chapter 865. Scaling the last floor, they already sustained minor injuries at this point. Meanwhile, Eldris and Timi had engaged it in close combat, throwing lots of attacks at it, but they still hadn't managed to deal any damage to it. Gustav's summoned creatures were lunging at it with everything they had, and it was taking them down one strike at a time. Swayi, with a single slash, he ripped one of the creatures, which were at least 3 times larger than him, in half. Internal organs fell out of the air as the creature dissected body parts flew in 2 opposite directions. The toughness of the creature they were supposed to defeat on this floor was the main problem. Even though its power was something to watch out for, they wouldn't be as worried if they could inflict damage on it. But all their attacks seemed to be repelled back by its body, leaving them running across the place aimlessly. Timi's power that could cause anything to degrade didn't seem to be working on its body. Even after using a very powerful attack that covered a large range and was supposed to degrade the body of the creature, there was no effect. What Timi didn't know was it was having an effect, but the effect was so minimal it looked as if there was none at all. He had conjured up multiple vortexes, saving the others from the attack of this mixed blood multiple times. At the moment he was about to use a powerful vortex attack, which he was sure would work against the creature, but he was reluctant to use it because of the way it would make him feel. Gustav was sitting far behind them, on a small rock protruding from the ground, crossing his legs while watching them battle with the mixed breed. "Dom, how did you kill this MF alone, Gus?" He voiced out from up ahead as he sank into one of his vortexes, dodging another attack that caused the entire vicinity to descend into shambles. Of course, Gustav couldn't tell them he only had to use Yarki to cause it to submit, and one touch from him caused the creature to get obliterated. With Yarki, the toughness of the creature didn't matter since it was being obliterated from the inside out, but he couldn't perform such a feat without Yarki. "Focus your attacks on one point or aim for its internals," Gustav voiced out. This was easier said than done, as getting close to the creature was close to impossible due to its speed and power. Aiming for its internals was also something no one there could do except for Eldris appeared at the creature's blind spot as it was being flanked by Dark Falco, Rhea, and Timi. The instant it fended off their attack and speedily turned around to counter Eldris, he had already opened his eyes at this point. Furum, the environment turned into black and white as the mixed breed lost color and found itself unable to move for an instant. Bang! Eldris' fist slammed into its jaw area, sending it flying upwards. His speed increased exponentially as afterimages were left in his wake, while he leaped upwards and continued to thrust his palms forward repeatedly. Bam! 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 In barely a second, he had already slammed his palm on the chest of the creature up to 100 times. He kept aiming for the same spot despite the fact it was barely having any effect on the sturdy body of this creature. The others joined, as well sending multiple strikes. The body of the creature suddenly glowed up immensely as it began to regain color forcefully in midair. Boom! A charge blasted forth from it, sending all of them tumbling backwards. Gustav pushed his palm forward, constructing a gravitational barrier before him to prevent the blast from making contact with him. Bam! It landed right in front of Eldris, who was no longer able to extend the colorless world towards it. As it swung out, EE's vortex had already opened up and swallowed Eldris before contact could be made. The mixed breed angrily jumped forward, heading for EE. Gustav wasn't interested in participating in this fight because he wanted to confirm something. EE pushed his hand forward, causing the beast to be swallowed up by a vortex that teleported it to ES back. The creature had a confused look as it appeared in a different spot, only for it to feel a hand on its head. Truant, E had climbed onto the shoulder of the creature and placed his hand on its head. A reddish-colored vortex appeared around the neck of the creature like a collar and began shrinking in size. The creature began thrashing around as it felt what was happening, but E latched on strongly. A vortex opened up beneath the feet of the creature, causing it to sink in a bit before getting trapped there. The creature reached out its hands to grab E so it could forcefully rip him off its shoulders, but then Eldris and Dark Falco appeared on its left and right side respectively. Eldris grabbed hold of its left arm, while Falco grabbed hold of its right. It was slowly starting to overpower them, but then Rhea and Timi appeared on the right and left as well, assisting both of them. They managed to hold the creature in place till the red vortex, conjured and shrunk completely, causing the creature's head to be yanked off. Blood jetted out crazily, but then the creature wasn't dead yet. With its headless figure, it swung all four of them away and turned to swing at who had just fallen to the ground with a nauseous look. Swoosh! A burst of wind blasted across the place as Gustav's figure arrived behind the mixed breed, and he sent it hurtling towards the wall with a fist. Bang! You good? Gustav asked as he stretched out his hand to pull up. How the hell is that foo asterisk curse still able to move? Voiced out with a tone of disbelief. Chapter 866. Chapter 866. EES Unstoppable Ability. How the hell is that foo asterisk curse still able to move? Voiced out with a tone of disbelief. This was the first time he had seen any mixed breed move after getting decapitated. He wasn't the only one shocked. The others were just as shocked. After slamming into the wall, the creature pulled itself out of the hole that was created and began to charge toward Gustav while blood was still jetting out of its empty neck area. Sprint has been activated. Gustav dashed forward and leaped upwards, somersaulting in midair as the creature's claws missed him by a few inches. A spherical orb appeared in Gustav's palm as he was flying above the creature, which he pushed down into its bleeding neck before flying past it across the air. Weird sounds rang out as the orb forced its way down the bloody throat of the creature, causing its neck area to bloat immensely. After landing several hundred feet away, Gustav gave the boys signal to distance themselves while the creature held onto its headless neck, trying to stop the orb from going further down. Who had turned around to puke, was unable to move away or create any vortex for them, so Gustav stomped on the ground. Shrill, diamond-like stones protruded from the ground in a line-up, spreading and reaching where the others were. In a few moments, it created a tall wall behind them, blocking them from the creature. Gustav leaped backward, leaving more gap between himself and the creature before also creating an Iro silk wall in front of himself. At this point, the mixed breed was still holding onto its neck, but the orb was close to the internal walls of its chest area. Gustav looked from beyond the barricade with god eyes and snapped his finger. Pa! An immense dark purplish and red-colored blast rang out as destructive waves of energy spread across the place. Boom! It was so powerful the ground quaked immensely, and even when the waves hit the Iro silk barriers Gustav had created, some chunks got blasted away despite their toughness. The body of the mixed breed got blasted into multiple pieces and scattered across the place as a crater was left in the middle of the ground, along with cracks that spread for over 1,000 feet radius. After many seconds, the place returned to tranquility as the debris flying across the air slowly began to clear up. The Iroh silk sank back into the ground as Gustav and the boys slowly walked forward. He had just finished emptying the contents of his stomach, so his face looked quite pale. Ildris tapped on his back while comforting him, and Falco passed him some water. Gustav looked up ahead at the location of impact and could barely see any body parts left where the creature was initially standing. +5,000,000 EXP. Just like the last time, Gustav got a lot of EXP from this, but he still couldn't take the form of this creature. He had reached the limit for acquiring mixed-breed bloodlines. He could still acquire mixed-blood bloodlines, but he already had way too many mixed breeds he could transform into, and now it had reached the limit. The only way for him to get rid of one was by transferring it somewhere else, because it was impossible to use combination with mixed breed's bloodline like the way he did with that or mixed bloods. Combination would only work in a battle where he got to combine several transformations, which resulted in ultimate combination, unlike combining mixed blood's bloodline where it could turn into an entirely different bloodline. It was still disappointing for him since this cosmic armadillo had a lot of uses, but there was nowhere to transfer any mixed breed bloodline to at the moment. Normally this blast would barely affect it if Gustav hadn't shoved the orb down its throat. "You good?" Gustav voiced out as he approached E. "Yeah. It just felt gut-wrenching," he said while wiping his mouth with his sleeves after blowing air into both cheeks. You'll be okay," Gustav voiced out with a smile. "Yeah. I just decapitated a level 90 mixed breed, even though the F***Cur took me by surprise and didn't die," E voiced out before laughing lightly. Everyone understood that E had mentioned opening a vortex within or around a person or a living creature, and how it usually felt for him. He had killed someone by opening a vortex within them before, and he felt everything the person felt. It was never nice, because at that moment he would connect to the being, and that was the same thing that happened a while ago, after he decapitated the creature, which was why he reacted in the way he did. EE's ability was actually very powerful. He could practically destroy anyone, but it was never a nice feeling whenever he used it in this way, so he only ever did so as a last resort. Gustav didn't want to join them in fighting all this time because he wanted to see EE use his ability like this, and also wanted to see the guys defeat a powerful creature like this without his input. He was satisfied with their performance and was assured they'd never be dead weight when they went on missions together. "We cleared the dungeon, guys," Falco voiced out with an excited tone. "Yeah." Rhea clenched his fist and yelled out as everyone had smiles on their faces. Before they left, Gustav turned around to stare at the end of the floor. God Eyes has been activated. His sight passed through multiple layers of walls and kept going down till it arrived at another floor where a mighty altar could be seen with a massive creature chained to a towering icicle. "I see you, Tabitha. We'll discuss one day if I ever come back here," Gustav muttered. "Sure, kid." Gustav was in his room for the rest of the day, preparing to leave camp the next day. "I know you can do it, little rascal." Miss Amy smiled at the last sentence as her face began to turn gray. "I need to leave now. Make sure you kill young Joe." The instant she finished saying this, the footage scrambled and disappeared altogether. Towards the middle, Gustav kept wondering who she wanted him to kill, but at the end, his face lit up with confusion as she mentioned young Joe. Miss Amy had stopped Gustav from going after young Joe multiple times, claiming he had different protection methods, and she also mentioned how she couldn't outright kill him because it would cause problems. Now that she was telling him to kill young Joe, he figured whatever she found out before leaving must have been very messed up. So messed up, she decided to disregard everything and decided that at this point young Joe just had to die. She left because of him? Gustav voiced out with a tone of disbelief. He recalled seeing her face turn grayish when she mentioned there was no time left. Young Joe was just a weak mixed blood from what Gustav remembered, but his assets and connections and background made him a force to be reckoned with. If he was able to pull such a thing off with Miss Amy, Gustav could no longer underestimate his intelligence. It was one thing to have a lot at his disposal due to background, and it was another thing to be intelligent enough to use all that to achieve your goals. He even managed to send Miss Amy packing. Everyone thought Miss Amy was infected with the so-called gray particle from the city she saved. They had no idea it was due to young Joe, who had successfully plotted against Miss Amy. Well, I've been wanting to kill him for a long time, and now I have more reason to do so. Gustav's face turned cold as he spat out. Chapter 868, Off to Mycenite City. Well, I've been wanting to kill him for a long time, and now I have more reason to do so. Gustav's face turned cold as he spat out. Gustav had actually been using the sacred jewel to secretly spy on young Joe sometimes, and he had noted a few things. The sacred jewel could show footage of any place so long as Gustav could direct it, so Gustav had occasionally checked the household of the Joss, as well as where their company was located in Plankton City and Jung's office. However, he hadn't found anything of real substance, except for maybe a few suspicious movements and disappearance. He couldn't ask the sacred jewel to spy on places he had no idea about, which was why he still hadn't found anything substantial even after spying on Jung a few times. Young Joe wasn't so stupid that he would engage in his suspicious activities in known places like his father's industrial areas or even his own place. He would always pick somewhere shady and well hidden. So long as Gustav didn't know where to look, it was impossible for the sacred jewel to spy on such places. I still need to find out what he's up to and devise the best way of killing him, Gustav voiced out with a contemplative expression. Gustav had decided that he would kill young Joe no matter what. He just needed evidence that young Joe had been up to something that was detrimental towards the earth, so killing him would be justified if it ever got revealed. At this point, Gustav didn't care about his backing or who was protecting Jung. Miss Amy had said he had to die, so he had to die. The sacred jewel suddenly appeared in front of him. The flicker of fluorescent-colored light within it had become as large as half a baby's palm at the moment. I want you to check young Joss' office once more, Gustav voiced out. The flicker of fluorescent light within it suddenly dimmed and disappeared before the entire circular surface turned white. A footage of Jung's office was displayed in the next instant. It was quite large, with a luxurious-looking desk at the right corner and arts on the wall. There was no one within the premises. Can you keep tabs? Record this particular location and don't stop recording even when anyone comes in. Until I tell you to stop, don't stop, Gustav commanded. The sacred jewel disappeared in the next instant. Gustav needed eyes to be on one of the environments where Jung frequented 24/7. He couldn't decide to keep an eye on the office himself for long, so the sacred jewel was going to record all the happenings within the office for the next few days, and after he had left camp he would play back some of the footage. Gustav's plan was to at least spot some type of clue or anything that could help him against young Joe. He already knew young Joe wouldn't do anything suspicious within his office, but at the very least it was possible to find something that could help. Maybe with this he could find out what young Joe did to Miss Amy and what he was plotting. Young Joe. A silent rage was slowly building up within Gustav as he calmly voiced out his name. Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters. He had to quickly deal with his current mission, so he could handle this afterwards, but he actually wished he could go after young Joe right away. You will be sharing the same fate with your little brother soon, Gustav swore underneath his breath. The rest of the night went by very quickly and the next morning arrived. Gustav was ready to go as early as 5 a.m. in the morning. He had to move to the main hall where he would go through the mirror teleportation checkpoint that led to the massive ship-like platform in the middle of the ocean. All his friends had come out to bid him farewell, including the girls. Angie shared a passionate hug with him before headed towards the main hall. She was too shy to kiss him in front of everyone. Matilda, Vera, Alevra, and Glade as well were all present. E and the boys shared fist bumps with Gustav and agreed to meet up in the outside world when they finished over here as well. Whether or not Gustav decided to participate in ISOP. Minutes later, Gustav was heading through the teleportation mirror after getting cleared to leave the camp. He turned around and looked at the place with God eyes activated. For all he knew, this might be the last time he would be here, except he had some business with the MBO camp. As of this point, he was done training in the MBO camp. He turned around and headed in through the mirror before arriving on the massive platform gliding atop the ocean. The moment he went through, just like before, one could see several building-like structures on this platform and many MBO officers moving around the place. Up ahead, Many aircraft were parked with different sizes, all having the MBO emblem crafted on their sides. Gustav only moved forward for a bit before an officer wearing pilot uniform approached him. "Officer Crimson, MJ Bach your pilot?" He voiced out with a respectful tone while reaching out to shake Gustav. Gustav received his handshake, and the male officer, who had a black alligator-like head, led Gustav towards his aircraft. It was among the most luxurious-looking ones in amongst all the aircraft, with only a few passenger seats. Gustav settled down in no time, and they took off. Mycenite City was on the other side of the world, which originally would take no less than 6 hours of flying to get there, but this particular aircraft was pretty fast, so the time was cut in half. Forwom, it glided off into the sky a few moments after the pilot started the engine. The aircraft was moving so fast, it already broke the sound barrier in a couple of seconds. See Chapter 869, Arriving in the Vertigan Premises S. Despite how immensely fast it was moving, everything seemed smooth. It was almost like turbulences were being cleared for them to move with ease. Gustav just sat in one of the passenger seats strapped in and kept going through some of the information for this mission in his head. Row? At the same time, his mind was alert as he recalled his last time flying out of camp. Internally, he was hoping he got attacked again, so he could finally lay his hands on evidence that would be traced back to young Joe. Surprisingly, the travel went smoothly, and in just 2 hours, they had nearly reached the other side of Earth. Although Gustav now had flight ability, he knew he could never match up to the speed of this aircraft. At least not now. The only person he knew capable of moving even faster was Miss Amy, as he recalled that when she was unsealed, she moved like she was teleporting. Gustav could never forget the day Miss Amy took him almost halfway across the world in barely a few seconds and displayed her true strength to him. Sometimes he forget that Miss Amy was one of the most powerful beings in the universe presently. Destroying a planet was truly something she could do if she willed it, but then young Joe, who was significantly weaker, had managed to get the better of her. This proved that intelligence was truly powerful in a sense. Although he knew young Joss was more of scheming, nevertheless it was still a part of intelligence. Gustav just had to beat him at his own game, or literally beat him to death. After another hour went by, the aircraft began to lose altitude as they took a particular route in the sky. Gustav could feel they had descended by a few thousand feet compared to their initial height. He looked at the holographic monitor which displayed the outside and could see a kind of thick fog up ahead blocking the entire sky. The pilot kept moving and flew straight into it. Few moments later they phased through the fog, and what appeared in their line of sight was an island situated in the middle of the ocean. No land could be seen at all in the surroundings except for this particular island, which looked well structured. One could already see tall buildings and well-constructed paths from this height in the sky. Mountains, trees, and other natural views looked good from the sky. The aircraft had significantly slowed down as it descended at this point. Gustav could see the city on this island better as they glided above the structures towards the eastern part. Vita 001 is cleared for landing. A voice was heard through the communication device on the aircraft as they closed in on a part of the city that looked way more better structured than the others. Roe? A few seconds later they landed in a private airspace. Gustav got off the aircraft, and a few people were already waiting for him up ahead. "Welcome to Mycenite City, Officer Crimson," a dark-skinned woman who looked no older than the age of 30 voiced out as she walked towards Gustav. "Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters." "Thank you," Gustav said as he received her handshake. There were 2 other men beside her who also welcomed Gustav as well. "I am Madame Salora Vertigan, and these are Marklin and Jude," she said with a respectful tone. Gustav recognized all 3 of them from the information he had gotten on the family recently. Madame Salora was the direct aunt of the next head of the family, while the other 2, Marklin and Jude Vertigan, were his uncles from his mother's side. They were important members of the main Vertigan household, and they had come here to meet with Gustav directly. Some guards were positioned around the place. It would seem they were followed around by guards, even though they were currently within the Vertigan premises. "This is the Vertigan hangar. Please come with us to the main household," Madame Salora said while gesturing for Gustav to follow them. "Sure," Gustav responded as they moved towards one of the small land vehicles parked at the side. There were about 3 of them, and Gustav got into the first one with Madame Solora, while the other 2 got into the next one, and the last one was occupied by the guards. As they drove off, Gustav looked around. The runway of the private hangar area was quite massive. There were also multiple private aircraft parked by the sides, all looking luxurious, with some engineers attending to 1 or 2. There was no doubt that the Vertigan family was very wealthy. They probably had a spacecraft as well, since it was not news that very rich families could own spacecraft if they wanted to. The entire Vertigan premises was like a small city itself as they drove for about 12 minutes, bypassing multiple well-structured houses and people moving across the place before arriving at their destination. The main Vertigan family house. Gustav got off the land vehicles with the others as they arrived before this gigantic building that was at least thrice the size of a mansion. It was silver and violet in color, with the golden statue of a 3-headed draconic creature in front. This was the most luxurious-looking household Gustav had ever been to, and this wasn't so surprising considering this family was one of the top 3 richest in the entire world. Before this, he had also seen multiple households, and there were at least 1,000 Vertigons living in this Vertigan premises. Everyone he had been seeing all bore some type of resemblance to one another, which depicted they were all blood relatives living in this large city-like premises. Unlike the others, they were also a mixed blood family with a lineage-type bloodline, which was another reason why they were so close-guarded and lived isolated from the rest of the world. It was very rare to find any mixed blood with a lineage-type bloodline because of how families like this like to keep to themselves and keep the bloodline from getting out of the family. Chapter 870. Doubts of the Vertigons. This was also another reason why a lot of them couldn't be found in the MBO. It was actually a miracle that Vaughn and the others were ever allowed to join the MBO. The surroundings was teeming with all type of guards dressed in the same whitish robe-like outfit with the emblem of the 3-headed draconic figure on their backs. Gustav walked into this massive household with the others, where the rest of the main family members were waiting as well. The living room was so massive, it made Gustav wonder how many people lived within. He only had information on the family members, but they still had chefs, maids, cleaners, guards, and butlers. He reckoned over 50 people could gather in this living room, and there'd still be enough space for more. Expensive artistic pieces on the wall, chandeliers made from raw diamonds and rare stones, pieces of furniture that looked like they'd sell for millions. Gustav decided to stop observing the household for now, as he sat on one of the sofas. The entire main household was gathering here. It looked like his arrival was going to make them hold a meeting. In a few seconds, 16 Vertigons had gathered in the living room. Gustav could recognize every single one of them. 3 children of the previous head who were all women, for uncles and aunts, which included the ones who welcomed Gustav upon arrival. For grandparents, 2 male and female, and lastly the acting head of the household, Madame Lillian. Madame Lillian, just like Madame Solora, was also dark-skinned, but the others had lighter skin tones, yet they still bore some kind of resemblance to each other. Some of them greeted Gustav when they saw him, while others just stared at him with inexplicable looks and took their seats. "Where is Stark?" Madame Lillian voiced out after noticing that one person was still missing. "I have sent a butler to inform him about the meeting," one of the uncles who had a mixture of white and black hair voiced out. "I would like you to go and hasten him up. We cannot keep Officer Crimson here waiting like this," she voiced out to the uncle, who responded by nodding and standing to his feet. He walked towards the south side where one of the diamond-structured stairways was located and began moving up. "My apologies, Officer Crimson, for taking up your time like this," Madame Lillian said with an apologetic tone. "No worries," Gustav responded with an unbothered tone. He wasn't in any way offended, as this was a part of his mission after all. The others also looked at him like they were scrutinizing him. "This officer seems quite young. Hopefully he is capable enough." Most of them had thoughts similar to this, and some of them were just waiting to ask Gustav all sort of questions when the meeting begins. Minutes later, the uncle who had left earlier arrived back alone. "Young nephew Stark seems currently indisposed. He claims he can't attend because he is working on something, and we should just go on without him," he voiced out while taking his seat. Madame Lillian had a wry look on her face as she sighed. Gustav could see the frustration on her face, which made it seem like this wasn't the first time something of this sort was happening. "Let's just go on then," she said with a look of defeat. "Welcome once again, Officer Crimson. I believe you have been briefed on our current predicament," she said to Gustav. "Visit Riedel. Me for extra chapters." "Yes. According to the information I received, I have to help you find the original emblem of your family," Gustav stated. "Correct? You see, this emblem is a symbol, and without it, Stark can't rule the family in the future. We've pushed the timing of the new head appointment several times because we have been unable to find it with our capabilities, so we believe the MBO sending you here. You must be capable enough," she said lengthily. "No worries, they'll start conducting my investigation as soon as possible to find it. If the information I got about it is accurate and truly only a real member of the main household can activate its power, then it would very much lose its value if it was taken away from this island. I believe it's still here. The only issue will be how to pinpoint its exact location," Gustav said with a contemplative look. Some of them seemed to agree with Gustav's words and nodded their heads, while some still had unimpressed looks. "If the MBO sent a kid to do a man's job? What qualifications does this kid have that makes you lot believe he can find the emblem?" One of the uncles voiced out with a tone of disagreement. "Oh, Bila, being in the MBO at such a young age is enough capability, is it not?" Madame Solora said on behalf of Gustav. "It is not," Bila, who happened to be the second uncle, voiced out. "Being young also means lacking in experience. The MBO should have sent us someone who has handled similar cases before. We cannot have a youngster wasting our time." Another aunt voiced out in agreement to Bila's words. "I don't think the MBO would send someone who is incapable of handling the situation," one of the three sisters of Stark voiced out. "Little niece, you seem not to know that this kid just came here straight from the MBO camp, which means he is still just a cadet, or he just finished. That screams inexperience," Uncle Bila voiced out again, causing the others' eyes to widen. Those who didn't initially doubt Gustav's capabilities began to doubt after hearing this. "Is this true?" one of the uncles asked after hearing that. "Absolutely correct. I in fact just completed my MBO training," Gustav finally responded with an unbothered tone. "What is the MBO thinking sending us an inexperienced officer? We need to switch and get a better one right now." Some of the family members instantly voiced out their dissatisfactions after hearing that. "What is your bloodline rank, kid?" one of them asked. Chapter 871, Suspicious Main Family S. "What is your bloodline rank, kid?" one of them asked. "Am currently an Echo ranked," Gustav responded. Chatter, chatter, chatter. "This is ridiculous. We need at least a kilo ranked mixed blood to take care of this case. We need a replacement immediately." Most of the family members were immediately against Gustav being the officer to handle the case the moment these were revealed. They continued to voice out their disagreements loudly until the current acting head finally spoke up. "Quiet, you lots," she stated with a strong tone, causing the chatter to die down. "Madam Lillian, as you know, the matter is crucial. Are we really going to rely on this new officer?" Uncle Bila asked while giving Gustav another glance of disapproval. Visit to Elworld. Discover_new novels. Gustav just remained seated with an unbothered look. Contrary to their expectations, he wasn't trying to defend himself. He just looked calm and uncaring, which made some of them feel a little weird. Some of them also felt he might not want to say anything because he was afraid of pissing off such a big family like theirs, but his look of calmness made them feel unnerved. Gustav was in no way bothered because if they decided to take him off the case, he could ditch completing an MBO mission in the meantime and focus on trying to destroy young Joe. Although he was truly fascinated about the lineage bloodline of the Vertigons, he didn't mind pushing that aside for something more important, especially when it regarded someone he cared about deeply. "You all are just yapping away without knowing who exactly Officer Crimson is," Madame Lillian voiced out. Everyone turned to face her with looks of confusion after hearing that. "This young man right here, Officer Crimson, was already appointed as an MBO officer from the moment he was admitted into the MBO camp. Not only is he a major lieutenant officer, but he also has the hero title since he saved Burning Sand City from potential havoc that could cause a planet-wide catastrophe. At this point, Everyone had looks of astonishment after hearing Madame Lillian narrate Gustave's feats. They turned to stare at Gustave in new light, feeling like they now understood where the calmness and unbothered expression was coming from. This same officer has several other feats to his name and has been completing 5-star rank missions in the MBO since his first year admitted to the MBO camp. I believe he isn't even 20 years old yet, and he's already an Echo-ranked mixed blood. Should I go on? Madame Lillian had a look of annoyance on her face as she stared at her family members after speaking. Some of them had slight looks of embarrassment after hearing all this since they spoke out loud without even knowing more about Gustave. Bila, who started all this, didn't do his research on Gustave well, or maybe he did, and just decided to only voice out the unfavorable parts. New novel underscores are published here. L-World. See, no wonder he looks so cocky, Uncle Bila said internally as he stared at Gustave, who in turn made eye contact with him. Gustave stared down at Bila without flinching even once, despite the fact that this uncle seemed to be a quite powerful mixed blood as well. Uncle Bila had to look away after seeing how Gustave was unflinching. I apologize for that, Officer Crimson, Madame Lillian stated with a respectful tone. It's fine, but the moment anyone doubts my capabilities again, I'll leave you lots to handle the situation on your own, Gustave replied with a strong tone. At this point, one of the 3 sisters stood to her feet and began heading towards the stairway. Julie, where are you going? Madame Lillian asked. I'm coming, Mom. They'll get brother down in a few, trust me, she said with a smile before storming off. Madame Lillian was unable to ask her more because she was already halfway through the stairways before they knew it. She looked even more embarrassed, feeling like Gustave would see their great family as the disordered type, but Gustave didn't really care about all these. I recall the emblem was well kept. Can you tell me when it was found missing and where it disappeared from? Gustave decided to get back into business as he asked. Try the L-World. COM platform _ for the most advanced reading experience. Please come with me to our private storage vault, Madame Lillian said while standing to her feet. Gustave got up and followed after her down the west side of the living room, which led to an hallway. Some of the family members followed after them as they moved towards a part of the massive household. A few minutes later, Gustave was standing inside a large space luxuriously designed with silver color and lighting. It was like being inside an expensive new world with all sort of items arranged across the place. There were weapons, rare stones, expensive jewelry, artifacts, and all sorts of things stored in this vault room. Gustave estimated that the items here would be worth billions. The space was larger than a football pitch, and they walked in the midst of these arranged items. There was a golden and silver pair of metallic-looking wings up ahead as well. It was very massive, and Gustave wondered why this would be needed when every single one of them could fly after undergoing transformation with their bloodlines. Gustave felt this item had some unique properties, but there were many other items with unique properties here as well. Up ahead, a massive C-shaped platform could be seen floating. Unlike the others, it was placed there separately and isolated at the top, like it was more important than the rest. However, it was empty. From what Gustave could see, the outline of the sea was supposed to have something embedded within. This is where the emblem was kept after our previous head. My husband passed, Madame Lillian voiced out while gesturing at the C-shaped platform up ahead. My C, Gustave said while looking around. God Eyes has been activated. Visit L-World. COM for a better reading experience. Gustave looked around while God Eyes was activated. The C-shaped platform up ahead looked like a well-crafted restraint that was capable of locking something in. Chapter 872, Meeting Stark. Gustave was able to peer into it and note its properties well. He turned to the side and scrutinized the entire space. Not only was the wall so thick that he had to peer at a particular for a longer period to see through, but even the entrance was also crafted in such a way that it would be impossible for just anyone to get in here. I need a list of everyone who has access to this place, Gustave said while deactivating God Eyes. Oh, it's just us main members of the family. Except for the little ones below 16 years of age, Madame Lillian answered instantly. Interesting. So only 17 of you have access to this place, and it can't be accessed by other branches of the family. Gustav said with a slightly low voice. You understand what I'm getting at, right? He added, It's impossible. Someone else must have found a way to get access. There's no way anyone amongst us could do such a thing, Uncle Bila voiced out with a look of annoyance after hearing Gustav speak. You see, I didn't say nothing yet. Why are you getting so defensive? Gustav asked with a look of ridicule. Of course, I get defensive when you're about to make speculations about one of us committing such a treacherous act. It affects us too, so no one among us will be stupid enough to do that, Uncle Bila said with a strong tone. He's right. It's not possible for the culprit to be among any one of us. It affects everyone. Also because it got missing at a time when we were on a vacation outside the island together. Only the guards were left to protect the main household, and when we got back it was already missing, Madame Salora voiced out from the side. Everyone wants Stark to become the head of the family right away. No one would want to try such, Madame Lillian added as well. I see, but does Stark want to become the family head though? Gustav asked, and what came next was a few seconds of silence. Their looks gave Gustav the answer to the question. Just as Gustav was about to speak again, two people walked through the entrance of the vault. Goodness, it truly is you. A masculine voice filled with shock and astonishment was heard from up ahead as the two approached. Gustav stared at the person who had just spoken. It was the dark-skinned young man who looked no older than 18 years of age. He had curly-looking hair with braids at the front that reached down to his chin area. Beside him was a girl who looked a bit older, but they bore semblance to each other. She had long dark hair and beautiful brown skin. This was the same girl that left the living room earlier, Julie. Stark? I thought he wouldn't come out of his room. The other family members were surprised as they spotted Stark walking toward them. Stark arrived in front of Gustav and held his hand before shaking it himself. I'm a huge fan, Officer Crimson, he said with a look of excitement. Oh, good to meet you, Stark. Gustav was a bit surprised that Stark knew him, considering the others mostly had no idea who he was when he arrived here. My goodness, I can't believe you were put on this case. I'm sorry I didn't show up earlier, Stark voiced out while still shaking Gustav's hand. The others in the vicinity were surprised as they watched this exchange because it seemed like Stark showed himself after being made aware of Gustav's presence. Originally, Stark wouldn't even show up for any meeting even at times when his mother went in person to call him, but now he was showing so much interest in a person. Stark, I thought you said you were busy, the uncle who went to call Stark out earlier voiced out. Yeah, Uncle Ronnie, I'm less busy now, haha, he laughed lightly. Everyone looked at him like they knew he was just messing around and only showed up because he found out it was Gustav. This led them to believe they had truly looked down on Gustav if Stark of all people could be turned into such a fanboy. You guys don't know Gustav Crimson? He is most powerful new generation mixed blood. Stark voiced out after he felt he was being judged by their eyes. Madame Lillian pointed out something similar earlier. One of them stated in response, We truly underestimated this kid. He must have a lot of influence in the outside world. Some of them had thoughts similar to this. I have followed all your achievements. It's great to finally meet you in person, Stark voiced out again. Yeah, it's good to meet you too. I believe you're the next head of this family? Gustav said while scrutinizing Stark's reaction. Yeah, they want me to be, so I guess I am, Stark responded with a wry smile. Good. They'll be needing your help in the future to find the missing emblem. Can I count on you to be of help? Gustav asked. Sure, anything you need, Stark responded with a look of delight. All right, we'll get down to work immediately, but first, Gustav said as he walked towards the C-shaped floating platform up ahead. Everyone stared at him, wondering what he wanted to do. Gustav arrived below it and activated Hover. Hover has been activated. He floated upwards while bringing out something that looked like a platinum-colored card and placed it before the C-shaped platform. It's been a month, but it should at least have some residual energy, Gustav thought as he waited. A few moments later, the platinum-colored card slowly transformed into a pale yellow color with hints of red. Good. Now I can properly start the mission, Gustav said internally while descending with the card in his grasp. What did you just do? Uncle Bila asked with a suspicious tone. A necessary procedure is all. I will only consult with Madame Lillian and the next family head as I make my investigations, Gustav said as his eyes turned into slits. What do you mean by that? Another one of the Annies asked, "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."